Somewhere between what is real and what should never be remembered, there exists a place where stories are buried, not written in books, not spoken aloud, but passed from fear to fear. These stories were never meant for you. They were locked away, forgotten, sealed behind silence. Every voice you hear belongs to someone who listened too long. Tonight, you will hear what they heard, and once it enters your mind, it doesn't leave. This is your final warning. Welcome to the stories that watch you back.
The highway out of Chicago was an artery that bled into emptiness. Not the romantic emptiness of open country, either. This was the kind that felt edited, like somebody had erased a portion of the world and forgotten to replace it with anything meaningful. Miles of corn stubble, a sky the color of old steel. Thin winter light stretched out and didn't warm anything it touched. Evan Cross drove with one hand on the wheel and the other around the paper cup of gas station coffee he knew was a mistake the moment he tasted it. The caffeine wasn't the point. The heat wasn't even the point. He just needed something real in his hand. Because everything about this trip felt like it had been arranged by something that didn't understand human beings. He hadn't planned to come. Not really. He'd told himself he'd call the county office and ask for records, maybe email the pastor's secretary, maybe send flowers and close the door on it. But then the voicemail had come. A woman's voice, clipped and breathless. A stranger. Someone who sounded like she'd stepped away from a crowd to say something she wasn't supposed to say. "Mr. Cross," the message began, and then paused as if listening. "If you're thinking about coming back, don't. They're awake again." Then the line clicked. Static. Silence. No name. No callback number. Just enough to pull a hook through his ribs and reel him in. So here he was, following a GPS route that seemed embarrassed by itself. Back roads, state routes, a turn onto a two-lane strip that cut through fields and black stands of trees. The town's name appeared on a faded sign. Gallows Hollow. White paint flaking. Letters tired. There was another sign beneath it, newer, cleaner. "Welcome home. We remember you." Evan slowed. A trick of perspective made the second sign look like it leaned forward, like it wanted to meet his windshield. He told himself it was just wind damage. But his skin didn't believe him. As he passed the sign, his phone lost signal. Not gradually. Not with a stutter of bars. It simply went dead. No service. The GPS blue line vanished. The map went blank, then offered him a cheerful message. "You are offline." Evan laughed once, without humor. "Of course," he said to nobody. The road dipped, and the town appeared. Gallows Hollow wasn't a postcard. It was a smudge. A grid of streets, a scattering of buildings, a water tower like a pale skull in the distance. A church steeple in the center, its tip sharp enough to pierce the gray sky. And something else, too. Something hard to describe. Not fog. Not smoke. A faint haze that made the town look like it was behind glass. As if the air had been sealed for years. Evan rolled his shoulders, loosened his grip on the wheel, and kept driving. The first rule of fear was simple. If you didn't look at it too closely, it might not notice you looking back. The diner was the only place with lights on. A squat building with red vinyl booths and a neon sign that buzzed like a trapped insect. Hollow House Diner. When Evan stepped inside, warmth hit him like a hand. The air smelled of fried onions and coffee that had been sitting too long. There were no clocks on the walls. He noticed that immediately, in the way you notice an empty space where a painting used to hang. Instead, there were framed photographs. The town's old football team, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, a 4th of July parade. Every picture was slightly off. Not blurred. Not crooked. Just too still. Too posed. Like the photographer had asked everyone not to breathe. A waitress appeared from behind the counter. She was older, maybe late 50s, with gray hair pinned back and eyes that were too attentive. "Seat yourself," she said. Evan chose a booth near the window, so he could see his car. "Habit," City instincts. The waitress brought a menu he didn't open. "You're Evan Cross," she said. He looked up. Her lips tightened, not in a smile, but in something close to recognition that didn't carry warmth. "Yeah," he said carefully. "Do I know you?" "No," she set down silverware that clinked like a warning. "But we know you." Evan glanced around. Two men in work jackets sat at the counter, eating slowly, heads angled like they were listening with their shoulders. A teenage girl stared into a mug as if the coffee was an oracle. A farmer-looking woman picked at pie without taking a bite. Nobody looked at Evan directly, but everyone knew. "That's nice," Evan said. The waitress took out a notepad. "Coffee." "Sure." She poured it without asking how he wanted it, the stream steady. The coffee was almost black. Evan stared at the surface and saw a faint reflection of himself. For a moment, it looked like his reflection blinked out of sync. He jerked his gaze away. "So," he said, forcing casual, "town's still here." The waitress's expression didn't change. "Some towns don't leave," she said. "Right." Evan swallowed. "I'm back because of my dad. And because someone called me." The waitress's hand paused, just barely. "Someone called you," she repeated, like she was tasting the words for poison. Evan nodded. "Said I shouldn't come. Said, they're awake again." The waitress stared at him for a long beat. Then she reached under the counter, pulled out a small bowl, and placed it upside down on the table. A gesture so casual it would have been invisible anywhere else. But Evan understood, instinctively, that it was meant to block sound. A childish superstition. Or an old one. She leaned closer. "Do you remember the creek?" she asked. Evan frowned. "The one behind the church?" She nodded once. "Do not go there." Evan started to respond, but one of the men at the counter turned slightly, as if he'd heard the question. The waitress straightened, removed the bowl, and picked up her notepad again, a switch flipping behind her eyes. "Special today is pot roast," she said brightly. Evan sat still, coffee cooling in his hands. The neon sign outside buzzed, and somewhere beneath the diner's ordinary sounds, the sizzle, the clink, the murmur, there was another sound he couldn't name. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against glass. Gallows Hollow had one motel. Of course it did. Sunset Motor Lodge. The sign was lit even though the sun was barely past late afternoon. The word sunset flickered. Sometimes it read SNSET. Evan checked in with a woman behind plexiglass. She didn't look up when she took his card. Her hands moved like she'd done this for a century. "Room 8, she said. Evan took the key. Actual metal key. A little tag that said "No refunds." Outside, the air had cooled fast. The gray sky pressed lower. Room 8 smelled like bleach and old carpet. The bedspread had a pattern of tiny suns. Ironic. Evan set his duffel down and looked out the window. His car sat in the parking lot like a vulnerable animal. The street beyond was empty. No kids. No dogs. No sound of traffic. It was too quiet. He turned on the TV for noise. Static. He flipped channels. Static. One channel flickered into a local broadcast, black and white footage of a church choir singing. Evan frowned. The image looked old, like a VHS recording. The choir members' faces were too pale. Their mouths opened in unison. No sound came from the speakers. He turned the volume up. Nothing. Then, as if responding, the screen flashed. For half a second, the image changed. Not the choir. A close-up of a face at the edge of darkness. Eyes open too wide. A whisper-thin line of a smile. Then the choir returned. Evan stared at the TV, his heartbeat steadying into a harder rhythm. He unplugged it. The room got quieter. He sat on the bed and pulled out his phone again. Still no service. He tried the motel Wi-Fi. A network appeared. "Welcome to home," he tapped it. No password prompt. It connected instantly. Then his phone displayed a message. Access denied. Evan's throat tightened. He turned the phone over in his hands like it might turn into something else. Then his father's name surfaced again, heavy as a stone. Evan hadn't seen his father in 8 years. Not since the last argument. Not since Evan left town and decided that distance could be a kind of healing. Then the county coroner's office had called. Found deceased. Natural causes. Next of kin. Natural causes. But the voice on the phone had hesitated before saying it. Like she didn't believe her own script. Evan lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, where a water stain spread like a map. Outside, a car passed slowly. Evan sat up, alert. Not a car. A dark vehicle with no headlights, gliding through the lot like it didn't need to see. It stopped for a moment near the office. Then continued. Evan watched until it vanished behind the building. His skin prickled. He locked the door, then checked it twice. Then, because fear hates emptiness, he started to unpack. His duffel contained his usual things: clothes, toiletries, a notebook. And the one item he hadn't told anyone about, a small wooden stake, carved smooth, wrapped in cloth. A joke gift from a friend when Evan mentioned the town. Just in case, the friend had laughed. Evan had laughed too. Now he unwrapped it and held it in his palm. It felt warm, which was impossible. Wood didn't hold warmth that long, unless it was already warm when you touched it. He set it on the bedside table like a paperweight, and tried not to think about the tapping sound again. Evening came like a lid. The town darkened, not with nightfall, but with something thicker. Streetlights turned on and made yellow islands in the gloom. Evan walked toward the church because he didn't know where else to go. Gallows Hollow Church of the Redeemer sat at the center of town, brick walls and stained glass, steeple piercing the sky. When Evan was a kid, he'd thought the church was a lighthouse, a place that kept the darkness away. Now, as an adult, he saw it for what it was: a marker, a warning in architecture. The front doors were unlocked. Of course they were. Inside, the air was colder than outside. The scent of old wood, wax, and something metallic. The sanctuary was empty. Rows of pews, a pulpit, a cross on the wall. But the cross looked strange. Not broken, not reversed, nothing obvious like a movie. Just wrong in proportion. The arms slightly too long. The vertical beam slightly too thin. A cross drawn by someone who'd only heard about crosses. Evan walked down the aisle, his footsteps swallowed by the carpet runner. The stained glass windows showed saints with expressions that seemed too knowing. At the front, beneath the pulpit, was a photograph of his father. A memorial display. Candles. His father's face looked stiff, like the photo had been pulled from an old ID. Evan stared. His father's eyes in the picture seemed not to look at the camera, but past it, toward something approaching. Evan reached out and touched the frame. The glass was cold enough to sting. A sound echoed behind him, soft, like cloth shifting. Evan turned. A man stood in the aisle, halfway back. He wore a dark coat and a clerical collar. Pastor, Evan assumed. The man's face was narrow pale, with hair combed neatly back. His eyes were a dark gray. He smiled. Evan Cross, the pastor said, voice gentle. You came home. Evan swallowed. Pastor? Pastor Alden, the man supplied. I'm sorry for your loss. Evan forced himself to nod. Thanks. Pastor Alden walked forward, hands clasped. His movements were smooth, almost too smooth. I heard you'd returned, he said. News travels. Evan glanced around. Yeah. Alden's smile broadened, showing teeth that were very white. Your father was a good man, he said. Evan felt something twist. We didn't exactly. Alden raised a hand, gentle. We all carry old wounds. The hollow is full of them. Evan's gaze flicked to the cross again. Alden followed his look. The cross troubles you? Alden asked. No, Evan lied. Just a remembering. Alden nodded as if that was the correct answer. "You must be tired," he said. "You're staying at Sunset Lodge." Evan stiffened. "How did you know?" Alden's eyes glinted. "We keep track of our own." "I'm not," Evan began. Alden stepped closer. The cold around him seemed sharper. "You left," Alden said softly. "But the hollow didn't leave you." Evan felt the urge to back away. He didn't, because pride is another kind of trap. "I'm here to handle my father's arrangements," Evan said. "Then I'm gone." Alden's smile didn't fade, but something behind it hardened. "Of course," he said. "We want what's best for you." He turned slightly, gesturing toward a door beside the altar. "Would you like to see where your father used to volunteer?" Alden asked. "The basement pantry. He helped so many." Evan hesitated. Basements, pantries, cold rooms. Everything in him said no. But he nodded anyway, because he came here for answers. Alden opened the door. A stairwell descended into darkness. Alden didn't turn on the lights. He simply started down, trusting that Evan would follow. Evan took a breath and stepped after him. The air changed immediately, damp, earth-scented, old stone. As he descended, Evan noticed something carved into the stair rail. Not scratches from use. Symbols. Marks that looked like letters from a language designed to hurt the eyes. Alden paused halfway down and looked back. In the dimness, his face seemed almost translucent. "You know," Alden said, "some people think a church keeps monsters out." He smiled. "But a church is just a building," he whispered. "It can hold anything you put inside." Then he continued down. Evan followed, heart beating. And somewhere beneath the church, something shifted, as if turning in its sleep. The basement lights were on. Fluorescent tubes that buzzed and flickered. Shelves of canned goods, boxes, dry food. A typical church pantry. But the air was colder here. Not the cold of an unheated room. The cold of a place that didn't want you breathing in it. Pastor Alden walked between shelves. "Your father organized donations," he said. "He kept records. He was thorough." Evan followed, scanning for anything that looked out of place. There were security cameras. In a pantry. 2 of them, mounted in opposite corners. Their red lights blinked slowly. Alden noticed Evan looking. "Vandalism," Alden said. "You know how teenagers can be." Evan didn't respond. A door stood at the back of the pantry. Metal. No label. Alden walked to it. Evan's stomach tightened. "That's not pantry," Evan said. Alden's hand rested on the doorknob. "It's storage," he said. "Old things. Papers. Church history." He turned the knob. The door opened with a soft hiss, like pressure equalizing. Inside was darkness. Alden reached in and flipped a switch. A single bulb illuminated a narrow room. Stone walls, a concrete floor. At first glance, it did look like storage. Boxes. File cabinets. But in the center of the room was a chair. Not a folding chair. A heavy wooden chair with leather straps attached to the arms. Evan froze. Alden stepped aside, as if inviting Evan to admire something. "Some histories aren't written in books," Alden said quietly. Evan's voice came out thin. "What is this?" Alden's eyes stayed calm. "A place to listen," he said. Evan backed up 1 step. The fluorescent lights above flickered harder, buzzing like angry insects. Evan's gaze caught something on the floor near the chair. Dark stains. Old stains. Alden's voice remained gentle, almost fatherly. "Your father asked questions," he said. "Questions can be dangerous." Evan's throat tightened. "Did you?" Alden smiled faintly. "No, not I." He stepped forward. Evan tried to retreat, but his heel caught the edge of a box. He stumbled. Alden didn't lunge. He didn't rush. He simply appeared closer. The space between them vanished like it had never existed. Evan's mind tried to reject it, to explain it, Maybe I moved and didn't realize, but the cold near Alden deepened. And Alden's eyes. Evan realized with a sudden, sick clarity that Alden's eyes were not reflecting light properly. They were like polished stones. "Let me go," Evan said, and hated the tremor in his voice. Alden's smile softened. "We don't hurt our own," he said. "Not unless we have to." Evan saw Alden's hand lift. Instinct took over. Evan grabbed the closest object, a metal flashlight from atop a cabinet, and swung. The flashlight connected with Alden's shoulder. Alden barely moved, but his smile vanished. For the first time, Alden looked annoyed. And in that moment, Evan saw something under the pastor's skin. Not muscles, not bone. Something tighter. Something coiled. Alden's lips parted, and Evan saw the hint of something sharp, then gone. Not fangs like a costume. Something subtle. Something that belonged. Evan ran. He bolted out of the storage room, into the pantry, up the stairs. Behind him, Alden's footsteps did not chase. There was only silence, which was worse. Evan reached the sanctuary and slammed the basement door. His breath came fast. He looked around, wild. The church was empty. The memorial candles flickered. Evan backed away, then turned to run down the aisle, and Alden was standing there. At the front, near the pulpit. Impossible. Alden's expression was calm again. "You'll frighten yourself," Alden said. "That's all this is." Evan stared. "How did you?" Alden tilted his head. "Your father used to say you were imaginative," he said. "Even as a boy." Evan's hands shook. Alden took a step closer. Evan backed away. Alden's voice dropped, almost affectionate. "Go rest," he said. "Tomorrow you'll visit the county office. You'll sign papers. You'll leave." Evan swallowed. "And if I don't?" Alden smiled. "Then you'll stay," he said. The candles flared once, as if fed by unseen air. Evan didn't wait. He turned and ran from the church into the night. Behind him, the church door closed softly. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just closed. Like the town was shutting its eyes around him. The motel lot was nearly empty. Evan jogged toward room 8, keys clenched in his fist. He felt watched. Not the vague paranoia of being alone. The specific pressure of eyes. As he reached his door, a voice spoke from the shadows between rooms. "Evan." He spun. A woman stepped into the lot's weak light. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, worn jacket, eyes sharp with exhaustion. She lifted her hands to show she wasn't holding anything. "Don't yell," she said quietly. "They listen." Evan's heart hammered. "Who are you?" The woman's gaze flicked to the motel office window. "The one who called," she said. Evan froze. "That was you." The woman nodded once. "My name is Mara Valles. I worked at the county records office until last month. Until I started seeing things in files that weren't supposed to be there." Evan's throat went dry. "Like what?" Mara hesitated, then moved closer, but not too close. "Deaths," she whispered. "Lots of them. Same pattern. Same wording. Natural causes." Evan swallowed. "They're lying," Mara continued. "They've been lying for a long time." Evan's hands clenched. "What are you saying?" Mara's eyes hardened. "Your dad didn't die in his sleep," she said. "He got in the way." Evan's chest tightened. "Pastor Alden." Mara's expression flickered. "You met him," she said. Evan nodded. He's not a man." Mara finished. "No," Evan stared at her. Mara glanced around, as if expecting the darkness to lean closer. "This town is a mouth," she whispered, "and Alden is one of its teeth." Evan tried to speak, but no words came. Mara swallowed. "They're awake again," she said. "That's what I tried to tell you. Something changed a few months ago. Like a switch flipped." Evan's mind raced. "Why call me?" Mara's gaze softened for a second. "Because your father left you something," she said. "And they don't want you to find it." Evan's stomach dropped. What did he leave? Mara stepped closer and lowered her voice. "A key," she said, "to the old water tower, the maintenance hatch." Evan blinked. "The water tower?" Mara nodded. "He said if anything happened, you'd know what to do," she said. "He said you'd remember the rule." Evan frowned. "What rule?" Mara stared at him, intensity sharpening. "Never cross running water at night," she whispered. Evan's skin prickled. "That's not—" he began, then stopped. He remembered. Childhood fear. Kids daring each other near the creek behind the church. The older boys saying don't cross after dark. He'd forgotten it because adults forget the rules that kept them alive as children. Mara's voice tightened. "They can't cross it," she said. "Not without help. But someone's helping them now." Evan's mind flashed to Alden's smooth movements, his impossible appearance. "Why are you still here?" Evan asked. "If you know all this, why not leave?" Mara's jaw clenched. "I tried," she said. "Roads loop. GPS lies. Cars break. People forget." She looked at him hard. "They let you in," she said. "They don't let you out easily." Evan's mouth went dry. Mara reached into her jacket and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She offered it. Evan hesitated, then took it. Inside was a thin chain with a small, plain pendant. Silver, worn smooth. "What is it?" Evan asked. Mara's eyes flicked to the darkness. "Something that hurts them," she whispered. "Not a cross. Not holy water. None of that movie stuff." Evan stared. Mara leaned in. "It's not faith that scares them," she said. "It's ownership." Evan frowned. Mara's voice dropped. "That pendant was made from the first coin paid to the founder of this town," she said. "The original deed metal. The first claim." Evan's pulse quickened. "You're saying, they can't stand what's truly yours," Mara whispered. "They can't stand what they didn't take." A cold wind slid through the lot. The motel office light flickered. Mara stiffened. "Go inside," she hissed. "Now." Evan turned toward his door. Behind him, Mara's voice came fast. "Don't sleep," she whispered. "Or if you do, don't dream." Evan grabbed the key, shoved it into the lock. His hand shook. He fumbled. From behind him, a new sound rose. Soft, slow footsteps on gravel. Mara's breath hitched. Evan forced the key, turned it, shoved the door open, and stepped inside. He slammed it shut, locked it, pressed his back to it. In the silence of the motel room, his breathing sounded too loud. Then outside, Mara spoke. Not loudly, just enough for him to hear through the door. "Good evening, Pastor," she said, voice flat. Evan's blood turned to ice. A second voice answered, calm, gentle. "Miss Valles," Pastor Alden said, still meddling. Evan's hand flew to his mouth. He listened. Mara didn't respond. Then Alden spoke again, softer. "You know I admire persistence," he said. "It's such a human trait." Mara's voice trembled. "Leave him alone." Alden chuckled, almost kindly. "I'm not here for him," he said. "Not yet." A pause. Then Alden's voice changed, still gentle, but colder beneath it. "I'm here for what you stole," he said. Evan held his breath. There was a sound like cloth moving. Then Mara spoke, strained. "You can't come in," she said. Alden sighed. "Must we pretend?" he asked. A thud. A small, sharp gasp. Evan's stomach dropped. He strained to hear more. Any sign of struggle, any scream. But there was only quiet. Then, a soft tapping at Evan's door. 1, 2, 3. Pastor Alden's voice, right outside, calm as a bedtime story. "Sleep well, Evan," he said. Tomorrow we handle your father's affairs." Evan's hands shook. The tapping stopped. Footsteps retreated. Evan waited, counting in his head, muscles locked, until he couldn't stand it anymore. He opened the door. The parking lot was empty. No Mara. No Alden. Only the hum of the motel sign and the weak light pooling on asphalt. On the ground near Evan's threshold was something small and dark. A single drop of fresh-looking red. No smear, no mess, like a punctuation mark. And beside it, the silver pendant Mara gave him. Lying still. Evan picked it up. It was ice cold. As he stood, a whisper slid through the air, too faint to be certain it was real. "We remember you." Evan slammed the door shut. And for the first time since he arrived in Gallows Hollow, he understood the truth. He wasn't investigating his father's death. He was walking into the same trap that killed him. Evan sat on the motel bed, fully dressed, lights on. He set the wooden stake on the table beside the pendant. He didn't believe in vampires, but he believed in patterns. He believed in fear that wasn't his own. The phone stayed dead. The TV stayed unplugged. Outside, the motel sign buzzed. The town remained silent. Evan opened his notebook and wrote one sentence. "They can't cross running water." Then he wrote another. "They let me in." Why? He stared at the words until they blurred. Sleep tried to pull him under. Not the gentle sleep of safety. The heavy, sticky sleep of a room that wanted your eyes closed. Evan stood and splashed water on his face. In the bathroom mirror, his reflection looked normal, until the light flickered. For a moment, behind his reflection, the bathroom wall looked farther away than it should, as if the room had expanded, as if there was space for someone else in it. Evan spun. Nothing. He looked back. His reflection smiled. Evan's blood stopped. His reflection's lips moved. No sound came from the room, but Evan read the words anyway. "Stay." Evan stepped back, heart hammering. The reflection's smile widened. Then the bathroom light stabilized, and everything was normal again. Evan stumbled out, breathing hard. He sat on the bed. He stared at the door. He stared at the window. He did not sleep. Hours passed in a thick, slow crawl. At some point, the motel parking lot light flickered and went out. Darkness pressed against the window. Evan's throat tightened. Then, softly, someone knocked on the glass. Not the door. The window. Evan froze. The knock came again. Gentle. Polite. Evan turned his head slowly. Outside the window, inches from the glass, a face hovered in the darkness. Not clearly visible. Just the pale suggestion of it, like moonlight on bone. Evan's hand moved to the stake. The face remained still. A voice drifted through the glass, muffled and calm. "Evan," it said. Not Alden. Not Mara. A younger voice. Familiar. Evan's skin prickled. "No," he whispered. The face pressed closer, and the weak light from the motel sign flickered back on for a moment, revealing the person outside. A boy's face. Evan's face. Himself at 16, pale-eyed and smiling. The mouth opened. The glass fogged. And the boy whispered, perfectly audible now, as if the window wasn't there at all. "We never stop being hungry here." Evan squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them again, the window was empty. The motel sign buzzed. The town's silence returned. But Evan knew, deep in his bones, that something had been delivered to him. A message. A promise. Gallows Hollow didn't need to break into your room. It could climb into your mind. Evan sat there until morning light, thin, gray, weak, finally seeped into the curtains. And still, the air felt dark. Because in Gallows Hollow, the sun didn't mean safety. It just meant the monsters were waiting with their eyes open. At dawn, Evan drove to the county office. The building was small, brick, with a flag that hung limp like it was too tired to wave. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed. The receptionist smiled as if she'd been expecting him. "Mr. Cross," she said. Evan forced a nod. I'm here for my father's paperwork. Of course, she said. Right this way. The hallway smelled like paper and cleaning solution. Evan passed framed certificates. Every photo in the frames had the same odd stillness he'd seen in the diner. People smiling like they were told not to breathe. In a back office, a man in a gray suit sat behind a desk. He stood when Evan entered. "Evan," the man said warmly. "I'm County Administrator Harlan." Evan didn't shake his hand. Harlan's smile tightened. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. "Your father was devoted to this town." Evan sat without being invited. Harlan's eyes flicked to Evan's hands, empty now, but still tense. "We made the arrangements easy," Harlan said. "All you need to do is sign." He slid papers across the desk. Evan scanned them. They were standard forms. Death certificate, property transfer, a release. Evan's eyes caught a line on the death certificate. Cause, natural causes. Notes, no autopsy requested. Evan looked up. Who requested no autopsy? Harlan's smile didn't move. "Your father," he said, "before he passed." Evan's stomach dropped. He was prepared, Harlan said softly. "Some people are." Evan stared. Harlan leaned forward slightly. "You're leaving after this," Harlan said. It wasn't a question. Evan's voice came low. "Maybe not." Harlan's eyes chilled a degree. Then, as if remembering manners, he smiled again. "Of course you are," Harlan said. "You'll do the right thing." Evan's hand hovered over the pen. He didn't sign. "I want to see him," Evan said. Harlan paused, then nodded slowly. "Of course," he said. "The funeral home will accommodate." Evan stood. "And I want access to his personal effects." Harlan's smile sharpened. "You'll have them," he said. "Everything that belongs to you." The phrase landed strangely, like a dare. Evan left the office with his heart pounding. Outside, the sky was still gray, and across the street, near the church steeple, Pastor Alden stood watching. Not waving, not moving, just watching. Evan got into his car. He didn't look away until he had to. Alden didn't follow. He didn't need to. Because Evan realized something else, something worse than being hunted. They weren't rushing. They had time. And they were certain he would end up exactly where they wanted. Evan drove to his father's old house. It sat on the edge of town, near trees that leaned inward like they were eavesdropping. The house looked smaller than Evan remembered. The porch sagged. The windows stared blankly. Evan unlocked the front door with a key hidden beneath the third step, exactly where his father always kept it. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old aftershave. The living room was tidy. Too tidy. Like someone had staged it. Evan walked through, searching. He found no signs of struggle. No obvious violence. Just absence. On the kitchen table lay a single envelope. Evan's name written in his father's handwriting. His throat tightened. He opened it carefully. Inside was a key. Old. Heavy. And a note. "Evan, if you're reading this," IT started again. "Go to the water tower. Don't trust the church. Don't cross the creek after dark. And whatever you do, don't invite them in." Evan stared at the last line until his eyes hurt. Invite them in. His mind flashed back to childhood stories, to rules whispered like games. He hadn't believed any of it, but his father had. Enough to leave a key. Enough to die for it. Evan clenched the note. Outside, something brushed the house's siding. Soft, like fingertips. Evan froze. Silence. Then, a gentle knock at the front door. 3 taps. Polite. Evan didn't move. The knock came again. Then Pastor Alden's voice drifted through the wood, calm, friendly. "Evan," he called. "May I come in?" Evan's blood ran cold. He remembered the note. Don't invite them in. Evan backed away from the door, breathing hard. Alden spoke again, softer. "It's a difficult day," he said. "You don't have to be alone." Evan's hands shook. He didn't answer. Outside, silence stretched. Then Alden sighed, almost sadly. "Very well," he said. "Another time." Footsteps retreated. Evan exhaled, shaky. Then he realized something that made his stomach twist. Alden had asked permission. Not demanded. Not forced. Asked. Like the rule mattered. Evan grabbed the water tower key and left through the back door. He didn't stop until he reached his car. And as he drove toward the water tower, the town around him felt less like a place, and more like a cage that had politely asked him to step inside. The water tower stood at the edge of town, surrounded by chain-link fencing. It loomed against the gray sky like a giant's bone. Evan parked, cut the engine, and listened. No birds. No wind. Only the distant hum of town electricity and his own breathing. He climbed the fence anyway, scraping his jacket. At the base of the tower was a maintenance hatch. Rust. A padlock. Evan slid the key in. It turned smoothly, like the lock had been oiled recently. The hatch opened with a sigh. Cold air spilled out. Not just cold, stale. Like a breath held for years. Evan clicked on his phone flashlight. The beam cut into darkness and revealed a ladder descending into the tower. His heart pounded. He thought of Mara's warning. He thought of his father's note. He thought of Pastor Alden asking, "May I come in?" Evan swallowed and started down. Metal rung by metal rung. The air grew colder. Halfway down, the flashlight beam caught something carved into the interior wall. Words. Not English. But Evan understood them anyway, the meaning pressing into his skull like a thumbprint. "We remember." He descended further. At the bottom was a small platform, and on it, a box. A metal lockbox with his father's name etched into it. Evan's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a stack of papers, old photographs, and a cassette tape labeled in his father's handwriting. "Play only in daylight." Evan stared at the tape. Then, behind him, from somewhere up in the darkness of the ladder, a soft sound drifted down. A gentle voice. Pastor Alden's, echoing like it had always belonged here. "Evan," he said pleasantly. Evan turned his flashlight upward. The beam caught pale hands gripping the ladder rungs. A face just beyond the light. A smile. Alden's voice floated down, warm as honey. "You came to the tower," he said. "That means you're ready to understand." Evan's throat went dry. Alden's hands moved, slowly, deliberately, as if he didn't need to hurry. "Now," Alden said, "tell me." A pause. A smile. "May I come down?" Evan backed toward the wall, clutching the lockbox contents. The tower felt smaller. The air felt thinner. And Evan realized, with a sick twist of dread, that the rules weren't just stories. They were laws. And he was about to learn what happened when a law broke. Evan didn't answer. The question hung in the water tower like breath in winter. "May I come down?" He backed against the curved wall, flashlight shaking. The beam jittered up the ladder shaft, catching Pastor Alden's pale hands, the tidy edge of his coat sleeve, the faint curve of a smile. Alden's voice drifted down with patient warmth, as if they were neighbors discussing the weather. "You don't have to be afraid," Alden said. "Fear is for the uninformed." Evan swallowed, throat tight. The lockbox was open at his feet, papers spilling. The cassette tape lay like a dark tooth in his palm. He forced his voice out. "You can't." He stopped, realizing he didn't know what he meant. "You can't come down? You can't hurt me? You can't be real?" Alden's smile widened a fraction. "Can't," he repeated softly. "Or shouldn't." The ladder creaked. One rung, a subtle shift. Evan's chest seized. Alden wasn't rushing, wasn't pouncing. He was asking. And in the asking, Evan felt the pressure of a rule. A law. Evan remembered his father's note. "Don't invite them in." Evan's mind raced, searching for a loophole big enough to crawl through. So he did the only thing he could think of. He lied. "Come down," Evan said, voice firm. The words left his mouth like coins dropped into a dark well. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the air changed. Not colder, closer. Alden's breath came down the shaft, a faint sound like a satisfied sigh. "You see," Alden said gently. "You remember how to be polite." Evan's stomach dropped. His own stupidity hit him like nausea. He'd broken the rule. He'd spoken the invitation. But Alden didn't descend immediately. Instead, he moved with deliberate slowness, hands sliding rung to rung, as if savoring the moment. As if the real pleasure wasn't feeding or killing but the permission. Evan snatched the papers from the lockbox in a frantic sweep, shoved them into his jacket. The cassette tape slipped into his pocket. He kept the flashlight trained upward. Alden's face came into full view for the first time, framed by the tower's darkness. His features were perfect in a way that felt unnatural, too symmetrical, too calm. "You shouldn't have come," Evan said, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Alden's gaze fell briefly to Evan's hand, to the way his knuckles whitened. He looked amused. "Now, Evan," Alden said, "that's not true. You came because you were called. Your father set the table." He descended another rung. Evan's body screamed to run, but the tower had only one way out. The ladder. And Alden was on it. Evan's eyes flicked down. There, at the base platform, a rusted maintenance door led into a narrow corridor inside the tower's structure. He hadn't seen it before because the flashlight beam hadn't caught it. A door that wasn't a door. A seam in the darkness. Evan lunged for it. His hand found the metal handle. It turned. The corridor beyond was tight and steep, a maintenance passage that led sideways, away from the ladder. Evan slipped through and yanked the door closed behind him. On the other side, Alden's voice remained perfectly calm. "Evan," he said, and Evan could hear the smile. "You invited me in." Evan pressed his back to the door, shaking. The corridor was pitch dark except for his flashlight. And then he realized something that made his blood turn cold again. This passage wasn't on any town map. It wasn't maintenance. It felt old, as if it had been cut into the tower long before the tower existed. As Evan started down the narrow corridor, metal steps groaning, he heard a soft scraping behind him, not the door opening. Not footsteps. Something like fingernails tracing the metal. Alden's voice drifted through, closer than it should be. "I can come anywhere you've welcomed me," he whispered. Evan swallowed a scream and kept going. The corridor opened into a small chamber, a round room inside the tower's base, hidden beneath the platform. The walls were lined with filing cabinets. Old steel. Rust freckles. Evan's flashlight swept across them, and his breath hitched. Every cabinet drawer had labels, dates, names, and almost every label had the same word stamped beneath it. Natural. He stepped closer, heart pounding. The air smelled like dry paper and old iron. A record room. A ledger of lives. Evan pulled a drawer open. Inside were folders packed tight, each one thick. He grabbed the nearest and flipped it open. Death certificates. Property transfers. Police reports. Everyone had the same language, the same calm bureaucracy. The first folder he opened was dated 15 years ago. Cause of death. Natural causes. No autopsy requested. Witnesses. None. Evan's hands trembled. He opened another. 23 years ago. Natural causes. He opened another. 40 years ago. Natural causes. He flipped through pages, breath shallow. Then he found a photograph clipped to the last file. A black and white image. A church choir. The same one he'd seen on the motel TV. But this time, there was a caption on the back. Choir, 1957, Redeemer's Night. Evan stared at the faces. They were too pale, too still. Then he realized why the image made his stomach twist. Among the choir members, near the back row, was Pastor Alden. Same face, same eyes, same smile. Evan's throat tightened. Impossible. Unless, he slammed the folder shut. The walls seemed to press inward. A sound came from the cabinets, soft, like paper shifting inside. Evan froze. He aimed the flashlight. The drawers were still, but the sound continued, rhythmic, like something breathing through paper. Evan forced himself to pull another folder. This one was labeled with his father's name. Cross, Michael. Natural. Evan's fingers went numb. He opened it. Inside was a death certificate. Natural causes. No autopsy requested. But beneath it were other pages, handwritten, not official. His father's handwriting. Evan's eyes darted over the lines. They can't enter without permission. They can't cross running water unassisted. They can't stand claim metal, deed, first coin, first nail. The church isn't a church. It's a barn. They keep their old in the basement. Evan's skin prickled. Then he found the last page. It was written shakily, as if his father's hand had been shaking. Alden is not the first. Alden is a speaker, a face. The true one is below. Below. Evan's flashlight swept across the floor. There was a trapdoor. A circle of metal with a ring handle. The kind used for storm shelters. Evan's throat went dry. The air in the room felt colder, as if the trapdoor was bleeding chill upward. He knelt, fingers closing around the ring. Then he heard it. Behind him. A soft click. A drawer opening by itself. Evan whipped around, flashlight beam jerking. One cabinet drawer was sliding outward, slow as a tongue. No hand. Just opening. From inside it, a whisper drifted out, thin, papery, hungry. Evan Cross. Evan's blood iced. He stumbled back, slammed the drawer shut with both hands. The whisper stopped. For a second, there was only Evan's breathing. Then a new sound. Footsteps. Not in this room. In the corridor outside. Slow. Deliberate. Alden. Evan's mind screamed. He shouldn't be here yet. But he'd invited him in. Evan looked at the trapdoor again. Below or Alden? Below or face to face? He chose below. He yanked the trapdoor ring and pulled. The door resisted, then opened with a wet sigh. Cold air rushed up, smelling faintly metallic and damp. A ladder descended into darkness. Evan swallowed and climbed down. As he disappeared beneath the trapdoor, he heard Alden's voice from the corridor, warm and pleased. "There you are," Alden said, always running toward answers. Evan pulled the trapdoor closed above him. Darkness swallowed the last sliver of light. And Evan realized, too late, that he'd just trapped himself underground, in a town that kept its secrets in the dark. The ladder ended in a tunnel. Stone-lined, old, the kind of passage you'd expect under a castle, not a water tower. Evan's flashlight beam quivered along the walls. The stones were damp and carved. Symbols again, those eye-hurting marks that felt like language designed to sink into your skull. Evan moved slowly, each step echoing too softly. That was wrong. Tunnels echoed. But this one swallowed sound, as if the walls were padded with something living. After a few yards, he saw it, a thin ribbon of water running across the tunnel floor. A trickle, like a shallow stream. Evan stopped dead. Running water. A boundary. His father's rule. Don't cross running water at night. But this was underground. And it was day above. Maybe. Down here, time felt irrelevant. Evan crouched, touching the water with his fingertip. It was cold enough to sting, and it moved, slow, steady, real. His pulse hammered. Was it there to protect him, or to keep something from following? He stepped back. Then he heard a sound from behind him. A soft, deliberate drip, but not from water. A second set of footsteps? No. A single footstep. Then silence. Evan turned his flashlight back. The tunnel behind him was empty, but the air was different now. He felt watched. Not from behind, from above. Evan swung the flashlight upward. The tunnel ceiling was low, stone. But in one spot, The stones were darker. A seam. A hatch. The hatch was barely visible until the flashlight hit it. And then Evan saw the marks around it. Scratches like fingernails. Recent scratches. Evan backed away. The ribbon of water on the floor gurgled softly. Evan's mind latched onto the obvious. If running water was a barrier, then someone had placed it here in this tunnel on purpose. To keep something from reaching the water tower. Or to keep something from leaving. A sound came from the hatch above. A slow drag, like something heavy shifting on stone. Evan's breath hitched. He stepped toward the water ribbon. If Alden followed him, maybe the water would stop him. Evan looked behind again. Still empty. Then, from deeper in the tunnel ahead, a whisper drifted back, faint and far. Down, down. Not Alden. Not Mara. A different voice. Multiple voices layered, like a choir in the dark. Evan's spine prickled. He forced himself forward, stepping over the ribbon of water. Nothing happened. No jolt. No barrier. He crossed easily, which meant the water wasn't for him. Evan moved deeper. The tunnel curved. The air grew colder, and the whispering grew clearer, like a crowd gathering just out of sight. The tunnel opened into a chamber. Evan stopped at the threshold, flashlight beam sweeping. It was a sanctuary, not like the church above, with pews and stained glass. This was older. Raw. Stone pillars. A low ceiling. Candles set in niches. But the candles were unlit. And yet the room was bright enough to see. Because the walls were reflective. Not mirrors. Not metal. Something else. Something that looked like polished bone. Evan stepped inside, carefully. In the center of the chamber was a circle etched into the floor. And inside that circle were objects arranged like offerings. A rusted railroad spike. A handful of old coins. A strip of leather that looked like it came from a belt. A small glass jar filled with dark earth. And a book bound in cracked black leather. Evan approached the book slowly. On the cover, pressed into the leather, was the same symbol he'd seen carved into the stair rail. He reached toward it, and a voice spoke from the shadows. "Don't touch it." Evan spun. A figure stepped from behind a pillar. Not Mara. A man, older, maybe late 60s. Gray beard. Deep-set eyes. His clothes were worn, like he'd been living in places that weren't meant for living. He held a shotgun. But the shotgun looked old, repaired, taped, cared for like a relic. Evan raised his hands. I know who you are," the man said. His voice was rough, quiet. "You're Michael Cross's boy." Evan's throat tightened. "You knew my father?" The man's eyes flicked down, then up. "Knew him," he said. "Fought with him. Argued with him. Tried to stop him from doing what he did anyway." Evan swallowed. "Who are you?" The man lowered the shotgun a fraction, but didn't relax. "Name's Silas Ward," he said. "People call me a drunk, a lunatic, a ghost who never left town." Evan glanced at the chamber, the offerings, the bone-like walls. "This is under the water tower," Evan said. Silas snorted. "Under the water tower. Under the church. Under the hollow itself." His eyes sharpened. "You don't know what you're standing on." Evan's voice came tight. "Pastor Alden." Silas's expression darkened. "Alden," he said. "That's the mask this decade." Evan's skin prickled. "Mask." Silas stepped closer, and Evan flinched at the stink of smoke and cold. "Your father left you notes," Silas said. "And a tape." Evan stiffened. "How do you know about the tape?" Silas's eyes went flat. "Because Michael recorded it in this room," he said. "And because I told him to." Evan's pulse raced. "Then you can tell me what's happening." Silas's gaze flicked to the book on the floor. "No," he said. "That book tells it better." Evan stared at him. Silas's voice lowered, harsh with old fear. "This town was founded wrong," he said. Not by settlers, by dealers. Men who traded something they couldn't pay. Evan swallowed. Traded what? Silas's eyes flicked to Evan's chest, to his heartbeat. Blood, Silas said. Not the spilling kind. The kind that's a promise. Evan's mouth went dry. Silas nodded toward the circle of objects. Those are claim pieces, he said. The first spike driven into the first rail that brought the hollow supplies. The first coins paid. The first earth taken. He spat the words like curses. They're how we hurt them. Evan remembered Mara's pendant. The deed metal. Ownership. Silas stepped closer, voice urgent. They live on permission, he said. They don't kick down doors. They knock. They ask. They bargain. They get you to say yes. Evan's face heated with shame. I told Alden to come down. Silas's eyes sharpened. Idiot, he said flatly. Evan flinched. Silas grabbed Evan's jacket collar and yanked him closer, shotgun held one-handed now. You invited him into the tower? Silas hissed. Into you. Evan's breath hitched. What do you mean? Silas's gaze turned almost pitying. When you say yes, Silas whispered, you don't just open a door. You open a path. Evan's skin crawled. Silas released him, pushing him back. Your father didn't want you here, Silas said. But he knew you'd come. Because blood drags blood. Evan swallowed hard. Where is my father? Silas looked away. For a second, the chamber felt even colder. Not where you can bury him, Silas said quietly. Evan's voice shook. Then where? Silas's eyes returned to Evan. Below, he said. The word landed like a stone. Then Silas looked toward the tunnel Evan came from. His posture stiffened. What? Evan whispered. Silas's eyes narrowed. He's here, Silas said. Evan's breath caught. Alden. Silas shook his head slowly. No, he whispered. Not Alden. A faint sound drifted through the tunnel. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against stone. And beneath it, something else. A low, hungry hum, like a choir warming up. Silas raised his shotgun, hands steady. Get behind the pillar, he whispered. And whatever happens, don't speak. Don't answer. Don't say yes to anything. Evan backed behind a pillar, flashlight shaking. The tapping grew louder, and the chamber's bone-like walls began to shimmer, as if reacting to something approaching. Something entered the chamber. Not a person, not a body, a presence. The candle niches along the walls flared faintly, not with flame, but with a pale glow, as if the darkness itself had been disturbed. Evan pressed his hand over his mouth. Silas stood in the open, shotgun raised. The tapping stopped. Then a voice spoke from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. It wasn't Alden. It wasn't human. It was beautiful. A smooth, layered voice, like many people speaking as one, a choir in perfect harmony. Silas Ward, it said. Silas's jaw tightened. Still alive, the voice continued, almost amused. Still stubborn. Silas didn't answer. Evan's heart hammered. The voice drifted closer. Where is the boy? It asked gently. Evan's stomach turned to ice. Silas's voice came rough. Not here. A soft laugh, like velvet. You lie, the voice said. But that's human. That's sweet. Evan squeezed his eyes shut. Then he felt it. A pressure in the air, like someone's gaze sliding over him. A presence turning its attention. Evan Cross, the voice said softly. Evan's body tried to flinch, but he forced himself still. Silas's knuckles whitened around the shotgun. No, Silas snapped, and Evan realized he'd broken the silence rule. The voice chuckled. Ah, it said. You speak for him now. Silas steadied his breath, trying to regain control. The voice drifted closer still. Evan felt it near the pillar, like cold fingertips tracing the stone. "You invited the speaker in," the voice whispered. "That was kind." Evan's shame burned. Silas's voice shook with rage. "Show yourself." A pause. Then the voice answered, gentle as a confession. "I am showing myself," it said. Evan's flashlight beam flickered. The bone-like walls brightened, reflecting something that wasn't in the beam. A silhouette formed, not fully, not like a body stepping into light. More like the idea of a body pressed into the air. Evan saw the outline of a head, the curve of shoulders, a shape that refused to settle. And where its face should be, there was only darkness. A darkness that looked back. Silas lifted his shotgun higher. "I can't kill you," he said through clenched teeth. "But I can hurt you." The voice sighed, almost indulgent. "Yes," it said. "Hurt me, Silas. Hurt me with your relics and your rage." Silas's hands moved. He reached into his coat and threw something into the circle. A coin. It landed with a sharp metallic clink. The air snapped. The chamber's glow trembled. The presence recoiled, just slightly, like a cat startled by a sudden sound. Silas threw another coin. Another snap. The presence hissed, a sound like paper tearing. Evan's eyes widened. It worked. Ownership. Claim metal. Silas's voice rose, stronger now. "You don't own him," Silas growled. The presence's voice lowered, losing some of its velvet. "I don't need to own him," it said. "He belongs to the hollow already." Evan's throat tightened. Silas threw a third coin. The presence shuddered. Then, suddenly, the air in the chamber shifted. A different voice joined the choir voice. Pastor Alden's voice. Warm, familiar, wrong. "Evan," Alden called from the tunnel entrance. Evan's blood iced. Silas whipped his shotgun toward the tunnel. "Don't listen," Silas barked. Alden's voice came again, gentle, pleading. "I'm sorry," Alden said. "You're frightened. Let me help. Just say you want me to." Evan squeezed his eyes shut harder, pressing his nails into his palm. Silas fired the shotgun. The blast echoed. Dust burst from the tunnel wall. Alden's voice stopped. Silas's breathing came fast. Evan opened his eyes. The presence in the chamber was closer now, despite the coins. It had learned. It moved like smoke around obstacles, not through them. The choir voice returned, softer, almost tender. "You can fight," it said. "But you can't uninvite what you welcomed." Evan's stomach dropped. Silas stepped back, grabbing Evan's arm. "We're leaving," Silas hissed. Evan nodded, trembling. Silas yanked him toward another tunnel opening on the far side of the chamber, one Evan hadn't noticed before. As they ran, the voice followed them, calm as a lullaby. "Run," it whispered. "Run to your little rules. Run to your running water." Evan's chest burned. Silas shoved him into the tunnel. The stone walls narrowed, twisting downward. Behind them, the tapping returned, faster now. And above it, the choir hummed louder. Not angry, hungry. They emerged in a storm drain near the edge of town. Evan stumbled into cold daylight, gasping. Silas climbed out after him, shotgun still in hand. The sky was gray, but it was day. Birds should have been singing, but the air was dead quiet. Silas grabbed Evan by the shoulder. "You're going to listen," he said. "Right now. In daylight. Like your father wrote." Evan's hands shook as he pulled the cassette tape from his pocket. "I don't have a player," Evan said. Silas cursed under his breath. Then he nodded toward a rusted pickup truck parked nearby. "Get in," he said. Evan followed, heart pounding. Inside the truck, the dashboard was cracked. The radio was old, but there was a cassette slot. Silas jammed the tape in. The player clicked. For a moment, there was only hiss. Then Michael Cross's voice filled the cab, older, tired, but unmistakable. "Evan," Michael said. Evan's eyes stung. If you're hearing this, it means I failed, Michael continued. Or I succeeded too late. Silas sat very still, eyes forward. Michael's voice went on, steadying as if he'd practiced. The Hollow was founded in 1891, Michael said. They'll tell you it was rail and coal and hard winters. That's half true. The other half is what they buried. Evan swallowed. Michael's voice lowered. There was a preacher, Michael said. Not Alden. Before him. A man named Caldwell. He met something in the woods by the creek. Something that promised protection. Prosperity. Silas's jaw clenched. Michael continued. Caldwell brought it to the church. He thought he could control it with scripture. He thought the cross would bind it. A pause. Michael's voice grew harsher. He built the church wrong, Michael said. Not to keep evil out. To keep it in. A barn with a steeple. Evan's hands shook. Michael's voice softened. It doesn't feed the way stories say, he said. Not always with teeth. Sometimes with promises. With invitations. With consent. Evan's stomach turned. Silas muttered, barely audible. Told you. Michael continued. Alden is a speaker. A mouth. It wears faces. It changes when people get suspicious. The real thing, what Caldwell met, it stays below. A low hiss of tape. Then Michael's voice again, urgent. The rules are real, he said. Running water confuses its path. Claim metal hurts it. But the biggest rule is this. The tape hissed louder, like static swelling. Michael's voice cut through. Don't let it into your heart through your mouth, he said. Do not invite. Do not agree. Do not bargain. Evan's throat tightened. Silas looked at Evan hard. Evan whispered, broken. I invited Alden in. Silas's eyes flashed with anger. Then Michael's voice returned on tape, as if responding. If you already did, Michael said softly, then you must do what I couldn't. Evan's breath caught. What? He whispered. Michael's voice dropped to a near whisper. You must find the first nail, Michael said. The first iron nail driven into the church's foundation. The first claim that sealed the deal. Silas nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for that line. Michael's voice went on. It's hidden in the church, where the speaker can't reach. Beneath the cross that was built wrong, Evan's chest tightened. Michael's last words came quiet, almost tender. And Evan, he said, if you hear me and you're angry, good. Anger is yours. Hold on to what's yours. That's how you fight. The tape clicked. Silence. Evan stared at the cassette player like it might speak again. Silas exhaled slowly. Now you know, Silas said. Evan swallowed. My dad. Where is he? Silas's eyes went distant. Below, he said again. Evan's voice shook. Alive. Silas didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, not in the way you want. Evan's stomach dropped. Silas started the truck. We're going to the church, Silas said. In daylight. Before they change the rules again. Evan's throat went dry. The church. Evan whispered. Silas's gaze was hard. That's where the first nail is, he said. And that's where your invitation will get tested. The truck pulled onto the road. Ahead, the church steeple pierced the gray sky like a needle. And Evan felt, deep inside, a tug, like something had heard his father's voice on that tape, and smiled. The church doors were open, wide open, as if welcoming them. Evan hesitated at the threshold. Silas stepped past him without fear, shotgun at his side. Daylight doesn't save you, Silas muttered. It just changes the kind of lies they tell. Inside, the sanctuary was bright with dull light through stained glass. But the stained glass didn't look like saints anymore. Evan blinked, confused. The faces in the glass seemed subtly different than last night. Their eyes were wider, their smiles thinner. Evan's skin prickled. Silas marched down the aisle. At the front, the memorial display was gone. No photo of Evan's father. No candles. as if the church had never acknowledged Michael Cross at all. Evan's jaw clenched. Silas stopped beneath the pulpit and looked up at the cross. The cross still looked wrong. Silas reached into his coat and pulled out a small pouch. Coins clinked. He tossed one onto the altar. The air snapped faintly, like a static shock. Evan felt it on his skin. Silas nodded, satisfied. "Still works," he said. Evan's voice was tight. "Where do we look?" Silas pointed to the floor near the altar. "Foundation access," he said. "Old churches have it. Crawl space, repairs, secrets." Evan scanned. There, near the base of the cross wall, an iron ring set into a wooden panel. Silas knelt, grabbed it, and pulled. The panel lifted. A dark opening beneath the floor. Cold air rushed up. Evan's stomach turned. Silas glanced at Evan. "You're going down," Silas said. Evan's eyes widened. "Me?" Silas's voice was flat. "You invited him. It follows your path." "Not mine." Evan's throat tightened. Silas shoved a flashlight into Evan's hand. "And take this," Silas said, pressing a coin into Evan's palm. "If you see a shape, throw it. Don't talk." Evan swallowed hard and climbed down into the opening. The crawl space beneath the church was tighter than expected. Dirt floor. Low beams. Old wood. Evan crawled forward, flashlight beam cutting across cobwebs. Then he saw it. A nail. Not a modern nail. A thick iron spike driven into a foundation beam. Old, blackened, heavy with history. Evan's pulse hammered. The first nail. He reached for it, and a voice whispered from the darkness behind him. Not Alden. Not the choir. A child's voice. Soft. Familiar. "Evan?" Evan froze. His breath caught. He knew that voice. It belonged to someone he hadn't heard in years. Someone who shouldn't be here. His younger sister's voice. Lily. Lily, who died when Evan was 12. Evan's throat tightened. The voice came again, closer. "I'm scared," Lily whispered. "Can you help me?" Evan's hands shook. Silas's warning rang in his skull. Don't speak. Don't answer. Evan clenched his jaw until it hurt. He reached for the nail again. The voice shifted. Not Lily anymore. His father's voice. Michael Cross's voice, weak and pained. "Evan, please. I'm here." Evan's heart cracked. His breath came fast. He wanted to answer. Wanted to call out. But he remembered the invitation. The path through his mouth. Evan grabbed the nail with both hands and yanked. It didn't budge. The voice behind him sighed. The air grew colder. A presence pressed into the crawl space. Claustrophobic, intimate. Evan's flashlight flickered. His fingers tightened on the iron spike. He braced his feet, pulled again. The nail groaned. Wood creaked. Then, finally, it slid free with a harsh scrape. The moment the nail came out, the church above groaned, like a building settling. Evan's stomach dropped. The crawlspace air changed instantly, like a seal had been broken. The voice behind him stopped pretending. The choir voice slid in, velvet and hungry. "Thank you," it whispered. "That was mine." Evan's blood iced. He clutched the nail and scrambled backward toward the opening. The darkness behind him moved. Not like a person crawling. Like a shadow spilling forward. Evan's chest seized. He threw the coin behind him. It clinked on dirt. The air snapped, a hiss, sharp and furious. The shadow recoiled. Evan didn't wait. He scrambled out of the crawlspace, gasping, clutching the nail like a weapon. Silas hauled him up. Evan shook, breath ragged. "I got it," Evan whispered. Silas's eyes widened as he saw the iron spike in Evan's hands. Then Silas's expression changed. Fear, not triumph. Evan followed his gaze. The church sanctuary lights flickered. The stained glass faces seemed to grin wider. And at the end of the aisle, Pastor Alden stood. In daylight, smiling. He didn't look rushed. He looked pleased. Alden's eyes rested on the nail, then on Evan. "Well done," Alden said warmly. "You found what we hid." Silas raised his shotgun. Alden lifted his hands gently. "Silas," Alden said, voice soft. "Still playing hero." Silas snarled. "Stay back." Alden smiled. "I can't," he said simply. Evan's throat tightened. Alden took one step forward, then another. Silas fired. The blast thundered. Alden flinched, but only slightly. His coat tore. No blood. Just a dark hole in fabric. Alden looked down at it like it was mildly inconvenient. Then he looked up, smiling. "You can't kill a mouth," Alden said. "Not with that." Evan's hands tightened on the nail. Alden's gaze slid to Evan's lips. "And you," Alden whispered. "You invited me in." Evan's voice shook. "I didn't mean," Alden's smile sharpened. "Meaning doesn't matter," Alden said. "Consent does." Evan's stomach dropped. Silas grabbed Evan's arm. "Run," Silas hissed. Evan hesitated. Only a second. Then Alden spoke softly. "Evan," he said, "may I have it?" Evan froze. The question pressed into the air like weight. A request. A trap. Evan's mouth went dry. Silas shook Evan hard. "Don't answer." Silas barked. Evan swallowed. His lips trembled. Alden's eyes glittered. "May I have it?" Alden asked again. Evan forced his jaw shut. He turned and ran with Silas toward the church doors. Behind them, Alden's laughter rose. Quiet, delighted. Not chasing. Because he didn't need to. Because Evan could feel it. That path inside him. The invitation he'd spoken in the tower. A doorway in his own blood. And it was opening wider with every breath. Silas didn't stop running until the church was behind them and the streetlights swallowed the sanctuary's last dull glow. Evan's lungs burned. The iron spike, the first nail, felt heavier with every step, like it was dragging old history through his veins. They reached Silas's pickup, and Silas yanked the door open. "In," he hissed. Evan threw himself into the passenger seat. Silas started the engine on the first turn like the truck had been kept ready for decades. As they peeled away from the church, Evan looked back. Pastor Alden stood in the doorway. Not chasing, not waving, just watching them go, calm as a landlord watching tenants move out. Evan's throat tightened. Silas drove fast. Too fast for the narrow town streets. The Hollows buildings flashed by. The diner, the motel, the water tower looming like a memory that wouldn't die. Evan clutched the nail in both hands. The iron felt cold, but not dead cold. More like it was absorbing his heat greedily. "Where are we going?" Evan asked, voice shaking. Silas didn't look at him. "Out," he said. Evan swallowed. "You said they don't let you leave easily." Silas's jaw tightened. "I said they try not to." They hit the edge of town. The road widened into a two-lane strip bordered by dead fields and bare trees. Silas's truck bounced over a pothole, and the rear-view mirror shivered. In it, Evan saw something that made his breath catch. The town sign again. "Welcome home. We remember you." But they hadn't turned around. They'd driven straight. Evan twisted in his seat to look back. The sign wasn't behind them. It was ahead, on the road they were driving toward. Evan's stomach dropped. "Silas," he whispered. Silas's hands tightened on the wheel. "Don't say it," he muttered. The sign grew closer, as if the road itself had folded. Evan's pulse hammered. They passed the sign. And again, Evan's phone lost signal, even though he'd never regained it. The sky above looked unchanged. Gray, smeared cloud cover like wet ash. Silas drove harder, jaw clenched. "Loop," Evan whispered. Silas nodded. They do it when they're nervous, he said. When something's moving they didn't plan. Evan stared at the nail. So we're stuck. Silas's voice went flat. Not stuck, he said. Negotiating. Evan's skin crawled at the word. Silas's truck hit another pothole. The nail jumped slightly in Evan's grip, and Evan heard it, faint, like a thought that didn't belong to him. A soft voice inside his head, warm as honey. Say yes. Evan flinched, clutching his temple. Silas glanced at him. You hearing it? Evan swallowed. Yeah. Silas's expression darkened. That's your invitation, he said. It's inside you now. It wants to be answered. Evan's throat tightened. How do I stop it? Silas drove in silence for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, You don't stop it. You out-own it. Evan frowned. Out-own it. Silas's eyes stayed on the road. You fill your mouth with your truth, he said. Not theirs. Not bargains. Not apologies. Not questions. Evan's hands shook around the nail. And if I can't? Silas's voice dropped. Then you become a door. The road ahead bent slightly. Evan saw headlights in the distance. A car coming toward them. For the first time since he arrived, Evan felt a surge of hope. Another human. Someone real. As the car approached, Evan realized it was a sheriff's cruiser, white and black. The sight made his chest loosen. Silas, Evan said. It's the police. Silas's face tightened. No, he said. The cruiser slowed, pulled partially onto the shoulder, lights flashing once. Just a polite signal. Silas slowed too, reluctantly. The cruiser's driver's side door opened. A deputy stepped out. He raised a hand in a casual wave. Evan leaned forward. The deputy's face was pale, but not sickly, just washed. His uniform was neat. His smile was calm. Too calm. He walked toward Silas's window. Silas rolled it down only an inch. The deputy leaned close, voice friendly. Evening, Mr. Ward, he said. Evan's stomach dropped. The deputy's eyes slid to Evan. And you must be Evan Cross, he said. Evan's mouth went dry. The deputy smiled wider. We don't get many visitors, he said warmly. But we're always glad to see family come back. Silas's voice was hard. What do you want? The deputy's gaze drifted to Evan's hands, to the iron spike. His smile thinned. Church called in a concern, he said. Said there was trouble. Silas snorted. Church can call all it wants. The deputy's smile returned, gentle. Pastor Alden worries about you, he said. Evan's skin crawled. The deputy leaned in closer to the narrow window opening, voice softening. Evan, he said, tone almost intimate. May I ask you something? Evan stiffened. Silas's hand tightened on the wheel. The deputy's eyes gleamed faintly. May I see what you're holding? He asked. Evan's throat tightened. The voice in Evan's mind whispered again. Say yes. Evan's lips parted on instinct. Silas slammed his palm on the steering wheel. N.O., Silas barked. One word, like a gunshot. The deputy flinched, then smiled. A simple request, he said. No need to be rude. Silas stared him down. The deputy sighed, as if disappointed. Very well, he said softly. Drive safe. He stepped back. Silas rolled the window up and punched the gas. The truck surged forward. Evan twisted to look back. The deputy remained on the roadside, waving slowly. Then, impossibly, another deputy stepped out of the cruiser behind him. Then another. Then another. Evan's throat tightened. They weren't exiting from the doors. They were stepping out from the shadows around the cruiser, like copies, all waving, all smiling. Evan faced forward again, heart pounding. Silas's voice was tight. "That wasn't law," he said. "That was an invitation with a badge." Evan swallowed. "They can use anyone." Silas nodded. "They can use any face you trust," he said. The road ahead shimmered faintly, like heat haze, except it was cold. And the voice in Evan's head whispered again, more insistent. "Say yes. Say yes. Say yes." Silas didn't take them to his house. He took them to the diner. Evan stared as they pulled into the empty parking lot. The neon sign buzzed, brighter than it should have been in daylight gray. Hollow House Diner. Evan's stomach turned. "Why here?" Evan asked. Silas shut off the engine. "Because it's public," he said. "And because they like public places. They like witnesses who won't speak." Evan looked at the windows. From outside, the diner looked normal, warm, inviting. Silas grabbed a small pouch from under the seat, coins that clinked softly. He shoved them into his pocket. Then he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a roll of tape, plain duct tape. Evan frowned. "Tape." Silas's eyes were dead serious. "For your mouth," he said. Evan stared. "What?" Silas leaned closer. "Your invitation is itching," he whispered. "If you answer the wrong question, you don't just lose the nail. You lose you." Evan's throat tightened. Silas tore off a strip of tape and pressed it over Evan's lips. Evan's breath hitched behind it. Silas's gaze softened, only slightly. "Not forever," he murmured. "Just until we're out." Evan nodded, helpless. Silas got out and walked around, opening Evan's door. He offered a hand like Evan was elderly or injured. Evan took it, stepping out. The cold air felt thicker now, as if the town's atmosphere had learned his name. Inside the diner, the same people sat in the same positions as yesterday. The work jacket men at the counter, the teenage girl with her mug, the farmer woman with pie. Not one of them looked up. The waitress appeared. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Silas. Then she saw Evan's taped mouth. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes tightened. Fear, maybe. "Table?" she asked. Silas didn't sit. He walked straight to the counter and leaned in. "Where's the ledger?" he asked quietly. The waitress froze for a beat. Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a thick book, brown leather, worn. She slid it toward Silas without looking at Evan. Evan's heart pounded. Silas opened the ledger. Pages filled with neat handwriting, names, dates, a record. Silas flipped quickly. Evan saw a familiar name and his stomach dropped. Valles, Mara. Natural. Evan's eyes burned. Silas's jaw clenched. He flipped another page. Cross, Michael. Natural. Another. Cross, Evan. Silas's hand stopped. Evan's breath caught. Silas stared at the page. Evan leaned closer, trying to see around Silas's shoulder. The line was blank after Evan's name. No date, no cause. Just his name written cleanly, as if waiting. Silas shut the ledger with a hard thump. The sound echoed too loudly. Every diner patron stopped moving. Not turning, not looking, just stopping. Even the sizzling from the kitchen seemed to pause. The waitress's hand trembled. Silas spoke quietly, but his voice carried like it had been amplified. "He's not on your schedule," Silas said. The diner air thickened. The neon sign outside buzzed louder. A voice came from behind the counter. Soft, warm, perfectly polite. Not the waitress. A male voice. "Of course he is," it said. Evan's blood iced. Pastor Alden stepped out from the kitchen doorway. His coat was repaired. No hole, no tear. His expression was friendly, like he'd just come to greet customers. Silas's hands curled into fists. Alden smiled at Evan. Evan's taped mouth felt suddenly like mercy. "Evan," Alden said gently, "I was worried. You ran off with something that doesn't belong to you." Silas stepped forward. "It belongs to the town," he said. "And the town doesn't belong to you." Alden's smile sharpened. "Oh, Silas," he said, almost fond. "You still don't understand the hollow." Silas reached into his pocket, pulled out a coin, and held it up. Alden's eyes flicked to it. His smile faltered, just barely. Silas tossed the coin onto the counter. The air snapped. Alden's eyes darkened. "Careful," Alden murmured. "That hurts." Silas leaned in. "Good," he said. Alden's gaze slid to Evan. "Evan," he said softly, "may I remove that tape?" Evan's heart hammered. The invitation in his mind roared now, louder than before. "Say yes. Say yes." Evan's lips pressed hard against the tape. Silas moved between them. "No," he said flatly. Alden sighed, disappointed. He turned his head slightly, as if listening. Then he smiled again. "All right," Alden said. "We'll do it another way." The diner lights flickered. The patrons at the counter began to move again, slowly, like puppets returning to motion. The teenage girl lifted her mug and drank without blinking. The farmer woman cut her pie, still not eating. Alden leaned closer to Silas, voice low. "You brought him here," Alden whispered. "You brought him into a room full of witnesses. That's bold." Silas's eyes were hard. "Public doesn't protect you," he said. "You're proof." Alden's smile softened. "No," he whispered. "Public protects me." Silas frowned. Alden raised his voice, just slightly, so the whole diner could hear. "Friends," Alden said warmly, "there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Ward is confused, and Evan is grieving." No one looked up, but Evan felt something shift. Not in the people, in the air around them. Like the room itself was leaning toward Alden, agreeing. Alden continued, voice gentle. "Would you like to speak, Evan?" he asked. The question hit Evan like a physical shove. Not because it was threatening, because it was simple, because answering would be easy, because the invitation inside him wanted to take over and say yes. Evan's throat tightened. The tape over his mouth suddenly felt thin. Evan's tongue pressed against it, desperate for air. Silas grabbed Evan's shoulder, squeezing hard. Evan met Silas's gaze. Silas's eyes said one thing. "Hold." Evan held. Alden's smile faded. For the first time, irritation flashed across his face. He turned toward the waitress. "Mary," Alden said softly. The waitress stiffened. Alden's voice warmed again. "Would you be so kind," he said, "as to take the tape off Evan's mouth?" The waitress's hand rose, trembling, moving toward Evan like she couldn't stop herself. Evan's blood iced. Silas threw a coin at the floor. It clinked. The air snapped. The waitress jerked like she'd been burned, hand snapping back. She gasped, clutching her fingers. Alden's eyes narrowed. Silas growled, low. "He's not yours." Alden's voice cooled. "Everything here is mine," he said softly. Then the diner's front door opened. A bell chimed. A man walked in. Evan's heart stuttered, because the man looked exactly like Evan's father. Michael Cross. Same face. Same posture. He smiled gently, eyes soft. "Evan," he said. Evan's chest cracked open. The tape suddenly felt like a cruel barrier. His father took a step closer. "I'm here," Michael said. "It's all right." Silas swore under his breath. "That's not him," Silas snapped. But Evan's eyes burned. The figure looked real, sounded real. His father held out his arms. "Come here, son," he said. Evan's hands shook. The voice inside Evan's mind whispered, sweet and urgent, "Say yes. Say yes. Say yes." Evan's throat tightened. His lips parted behind the tape. Alden watched, calm, patient, like a fisherman watching a float bob. Silas grabbed Evan's face with one hand, forcing Evan's gaze to his. Silas hissed, brutal, "That's not your father." Evan trembled. The figure's smile faltered, just slightly. Evan noticed then, his father's eyes weren't reflecting light properly. They were polished stone, just like Alden. Evan's stomach dropped. The figure spoke again, voice changing, layering, harmonizing. The choir voice wore Michael's mouth. "Evan Cross," it whispered. "May I hold you?" Evan's knees went weak. Silas shoved Evan backward. "Out," Silas snarled. Silas grabbed Evan's arm and hauled him toward the door. Alden didn't chase. He only called after them, voice warm, "Take care," he said. "And Evan, remember, you already let me in." They burst out of the diner into gray daylight. Evan's breath came in sobs behind the tape. Silas didn't stop running. Because now Evan knew something worse than monsters existed. They could wear love like a mask. Silas dragged Evan back to the motel lot. Evan stumbled, dizzy. Silas yanked the tape off Evan's mouth. Evan sucked in air like he'd been drowning. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, voice shaking. "They used him," Evan whispered. "They used my dad's face." Silas's eyes were hard. "They use whatever gets permission," he said. Evan's hands tightened on the nail. Silas shoved Evan into room 8 and slammed the door. He locked it. Then he shoved the motel dresser in front of it. Evan stared. "What are you doing?" Silas's voice was tight. "Buying time," he said. Evan swallowed. "For what?" Silas pulled the curtains shut, darkening the room. "For night," he said. Evan's stomach dropped. "Night is when they hunt." Silas nodded. "Night is when they eat," he corrected. Evan's throat went dry. "We need to leave." Silas's eyes flashed. "We can't," he said. "Not yet." Evan's voice rose. "Then what do we do?" Silas reached into his pocket and pulled out coins. He placed them on the windowsill, evenly spaced. He put one on the nightstand. He put one near the door. "Like tiny anchors. Claim metal boundaries," Silas murmured. "Not perfect, but it slows them." Evan's heart pounded. "Slows them." Silas looked at Evan. "You're still thinking like this is a chase," Silas said quietly. "It's not. It's a meal." Evan's skin crawled. Silas stepped close. "Your invitation is active," Silas said. "They can't force you to say yes, but they can make you want to." Evan's hands shook. "Like a craving," Silas continued. "Like thirst. Like loneliness." Evan swallowed, voice small. "How do I fight that?" Silas tapped Evan's chest with 2 fingers. "By remembering you're not hungry for them," he said. "You're hungry for your father, your sister, your past. Closure." Evan's eyes stung. "That's not fair." Silas's expression softened again. "Just a flicker." "They don't play fair," he said. Evan sat on the bed, clutching the nail. His mind replayed the diner, his father's face, that gentle voice turning into a choir. The room felt too still. Evan's eyes flicked to the bathroom mirror. He remembered his reflection smiling. Evan stood slowly and walked toward it. Silas snapped, "Don't." Evan froze. Silas's eyes narrowed. "Mirrors are mouths too," he said. Evan's skin prickled. Outside, the motel lot light flickered. Then came the tapping again. At the window, not the door. Up, up. Evan's breath hitched. Silas lifted his shotgun and aimed at the window. The tapping continued, polite. Then a voice, muffled by glass, gentle and familiar. Evan. Evan's stomach dropped. It was Mara's voice. Silas stiffened. Evan stepped closer, heart pounding. Mara, Evan whispered. Silas hissed. No, Evan's throat tightened. Outside the window, a figure stood. A woman with dark hair pulled back. Worn jacket. Sharp eyes. Ma. She looked scared. She pressed her palm to the glass. Evan, she whispered. Please. I'm alive. Evan's mouth went dry. Silas's voice was harsh. Step away from the window. Mara's eyes flicked to Silas. Silas, she said softly. We don't have time. There. Her voice cracked like real fear. Evan's chest tightened. Mara leaned closer. Evan, she whispered. You have the nail. Good. But it's not enough. Evan swallowed. Mara, Silas snarled. Don't answer her. Mara's eyes widened. Silas, she pleaded. I'm real. Silas's shotgun didn't lower. Mara's gaze returned to Evan. Listen, she whispered. They're going to feed tonight. Not on you. Not yet. They're going to feed on the town. Evan's blood iced. What do you mean? Mara's voice shook. They're holding a service, she whispered. A night service. Everyone will go. Everyone will say yes to something. Evan's stomach turned. Mara swallowed hard. There's a way to break the loop, she whispered. But you have to do it before midnight. Evan's mind raced. How? Mara's eyes glistened, desperate. You have to return something they stole, she whispered. Evan frowned. What did they steal? Mara's voice dropped, almost inaudible. Your father, she said. Evan's heart slammed. Mara continued, breath trembling. Your dad isn't dead, she whispered. He's held below the church, and they use him like a bell. Every time he breaks, the hollow resets. Evan's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Mara's eyes locked on Evan, fierce. Because I couldn't save him, she whispered. And because you're the only one who can. Silas's face twitched. Evan stepped closer to the glass, shaking. Mara, how do I know it's you? Evan whispered. Mara's eyes widened. Ask me something only I'd know, she whispered. Evan's mind scrambled. He remembered the pendant she gave him, the drop of red, her disappearance. He swallowed. What did you say to me in the parking lot? Evan asked. Mara's voice came fast, exact. Don't sleep, she whispered. Or if you do, don't dream. Evan's breath hitched. Silas's grip tightened on the shotgun, but his eyes flickered with uncertainty. Mara pressed her forehead to the glass. Evan, she whispered. Don't let Alden make you answer. Don't let the town make you agree. You have to be the one who says the final word. Evan swallowed. What final word? Mara's eyes sharpened. The opposite of yes, she whispered. Evan frowned. No. Mara shook her head, tiny. No is still a response, she whispered. They can twist responses. Evan's skin prickled. Mara's voice dropped, urgent. You have to revoke, she said. You have to unclaim what you gave. Evan's throat tightened. How? Mara's eyes darted around the lot. Midnight, she whispered. At the creek behind the church. Running water. Bring the nail. Bring claim metal. And bring your father's name, spoken as yours. Evan's heart hammered. Silas cursed softly. Mara, Silas snarled. Step away. Mara's eyes flicked to Silas, sorrowful. You're too late for me, she whispered. But not for him. Evan's chest tightened. Mara, come inside. Mara's expression changed instantly. Fear. No, she whispered. Don't say that. Evan froze. Mara's voice shook. If you invite me, she whispered, they come with me. Evan's stomach dropped. Silas's face went hard. Mara stepped back from the window. Her eyes stayed locked on Evan. Creak, she mouthed. Then she turned and walked into the gray evening. Evan stared after her. Silas lowered his shotgun slowly. Was that her? Evan whispered. Silas's jaw clenched. I don't know, he said. Evan's throat tightened. But she knew what she said. Silas nodded faintly. Then he looked at Evan, eyes hard. Tonight, Silas said, we go to the creek. Evan swallowed. Outside, the motel sign buzzed louder, and the voice in Evan's head whispered, sweeter now. Say yes to midnight. The town changed when night came. Not gradually. Not with sunset. It changed like a switch. Streetlights flickered on, and their yellow glow didn't feel like safety. It felt like stage lighting, as if the town wanted to be seen. Silas drove without headlights. He said it helped. Evan didn't ask why. They parked behind the diner and walked through an alley toward the church. Evan's grip on the first nail was tight enough to hurt. Silas carried his shotgun and a pocket full of coins. The church doors were open. Inside, candles lined the aisle. A crowd filled the pews. The same diner patrons. The receptionist. The county administrator. People Evan hadn't seen yet. They sat perfectly still, faces pale in candlelight, eyes fixed forward like they were watching a screen. At the front stood Pastor Alden. He wore a darker robe now. His smile was gentle. He looked like a man ready to comfort grieving souls. Silas and Evan stayed near the back, in shadow. Alden's voice carried warmly. Tonight, Alden said, we gather for remembrance. Evan's stomach turned at the word. We remember those we've lost, Alden continued. We remember those who return. Alden's eyes drifted, briefly, to the back of the church. To Evan. Evan's throat tightened. Alden smiled wider, as if pleased to see him. Remembrance is a gift, Alden said, because to remember is to hold, and to hold is to belong. The crowd murmured softly in unison. Not words. A hum. The choir hum. Evan's skin crawled. Silas leaned close to Evan's ear, whispering, Don't breathe too loud. Alden continued. Some of you have questions, he said gently. Some of you have pain. Tonight, we share our burdens. He lifted his hands. The crowd rose slowly, like one body. Alden smiled. And now, he said softly, we speak the word that opens our hearts. Evan's pulse hammered. The voice in Evan's head rose, hungry. Say yes. Alden's eyes gleamed. On the count of 3, Alden said, voice warm. 1. The candles flared. 2. The stained glass seemed to darken, as if absorbing light. 3. The crowd spoke in unison, calm as sleep. Yes. Evan's stomach dropped. The church air snapped like a wire pulled taut. Evan felt pressure in his chest, like something had tightened around his ribs. Silas swore under his breath. Alden smiled, satisfied. Thank you, he whispered. Then he turned slightly, as if listening to someone deeper. His smile softened again. Now, Alden said, we remember the first promise, the first claim, the first. His eyes flicked to the cross. Evan's grip tightened on the nail. Silas hissed, now. They moved, quietly, quickly, down the side aisle toward the rear exit that led toward the creek path. But Alden's head turned slightly, not fully, just enough to show he'd noticed motion. His smile widened. He didn't stop speaking. He didn't have to, because the crowd shifted, subtly, blocking the side aisle like sleepy cattle, bodies drifting into their path without looking. Evan's pulse hammered. Silas pulled a coin from his pocket and dropped it gently. It clinked on wood. The air snapped. The nearest townspeople flinched, stepping back as if burned. A path opened. Evan and Silas slipped through, out the side door, into night air. Evan gasped, relieved. But the relief lasted only a second. Because outside, the churchyard was full of people too. They stood among graves, motionless, watching. And beyond them, at the tree line, the creek whispered, running water, thin and dark. A boundary, a chance. Silas grabbed Evan's arm. "Creek," he hissed. They ran. Behind them, the church door closed softly, and Alden's voice floated out through the walls, too clear for distance. "Evan," he called gently, "where are you going?" Evan's throat tightened. He didn't answer. The creek drew closer, a dark ribbon beneath skeletal branches. Evan heard it now, not just water, but voices in it, whispering with the current. Silas shoved Evan toward the bank. "Midnight revocation," Silas whispered. "Like Mara said." Evan's hands shook. "How do I do it?" Silas looked at him, eyes fierce. "You say what you are," he said, "not what they want." Evan's chest tightened. The voice in his head hissed, "Say yes." Evan's lips trembled. Silas shoved the iron nail into Evan's hands. "Hold it over the water," Silas said. "Like a key, like a claim." Evan did, arms shaking. The creek gurgled softly. The air around them grew colder. A presence gathered behind the trees. Alden's footsteps approached, slow, polite. Not rushing, always polite. Alden's voice drifted through the branches. "Evan," he said warmly, "may I join you?" Evan's breath hitched. Silas raised his shotgun. Alden stepped into view, just beyond the creek's edge. He stopped. He didn't cross. His smile remained. "Running water," Alden mused. "Old superstition." Silas snarled, "Stay there." Alden smiled at Silas. "Still rude," he said. Then his gaze returned to Evan. "Evan," Alden whispered, "you're doing something dangerous." Evan's hands shook over the creek. "Give me the nail," Alden said softly, "and I'll give you your father." Evan's heart slammed. Silas hissed, "Don't listen." Alden's eyes gleamed, gentle. "Just say you want the trade," Alden whispered. "Just say yes." The voice in Evan's head roared now, sweet, desperate. "Say yes. Say yes." Evan's throat tightened. His father's face flashed in his mind. His sister's voice. His own loneliness. Alden's smile widened, sensing the pull. Evan's lips parted, and then he remembered his father's tape. "Fill your mouth with your truth." Evan swallowed hard. He lifted the nail higher, over the creek, and he spoke, not yes, not no, something else. A declaration, a claim. Evan's voice shook, but it was his. "I revoke," he said. The word hit the air like a stone thrown into still water. The creek gurgled louder. Alden's smile faltered. Evan continued, forcing each syllable through trembling lips. "I revoke what I invited," Evan said. "I revoke the path I opened. I revoke your access." The air snapped, harder than a coin. Alden's face tightened, irritation flashing. "That's not how it works," Alden said softly. Evan's voice rose, stronger now. "It is for me," Evan said, "because my mouth is mine." The creek surged, just a little, rippling harder. Alden's eyes narrowed. "Evan," he said, voice cooling, "may I speak to you?" Evan cut him off, voice sharp. "I revoke," he repeated. "By my name." He hesitated, then did what Mara said. He spoke his father's name as his own. "By Michael Cross," Evan said, voice shaking. "I revoke." For a second, the world held its breath. Alden's smile cracked. The choir hum rose from the woods, angry now, vibrating through the branches. Alden's voice sharpened. "You don't get to claim him," Alden hissed. Silas threw a handful of coins onto the ground. Clink, clink, clink. The air snapped repeatedly, like a chain of sparks. Alden recoiled a step. Not crossing. Not leaving. just reacting. Evan's hands trembled. He raised the nail higher. "Then take it back," Evan said through clenched teeth, and hurled the first nail into the creek. The iron spike hit the water, and the creek screamed. Not a literal scream. A sound like metal dragged across teeth. The water surged, dark and fast. Alden jerked as if struck. His smile vanished. His eyes went flat and furious. The choir hum spiked into a harsh vibration. The trees shook with it. Alden's voice came low, no longer polite. "You just rang the bell," he whispered. Evan's blood iced. "What bell?" Alden's smile returned, but wrong now, stretched. "The hollow heard you," he whispered, "and the hollow wakes hungry." The ground beneath Evan's feet trembled faintly, like something deep shifting in bed. Silas grabbed Evan's arm. "Run!" Silas roared. They sprinted along the creek bank. Behind them, the church lights went out one by one, like candles snuffed in a giant's hand. And from beneath the town, a low sound rose, deep, pleased, waking. Not a voice. A throat clearing. Evan's chest seized. Silas dragged him toward the storm drain route. Evan stumbled, breath ragged. Behind them, Alden's voice floated softly, almost affectionate again. "Good," he called. "Now you're part of the story." Evan didn't look back, because he could feel it now, something moving under the town. Something bigger than Alden. Something that had been listening for the first nail to return to water. Something that had just been fed a word it loved. Revoke. A new kind of permission. And as Evan ran, he heard the whisper inside his own skull. Changed now, not sweet. Curious. Hungry. Again. The storm drain stank of wet concrete and old leaves. Evan and Silas crouched beneath a low arch where the tunnel widened into a pocket of darkness. Above them, a grate showed a sliver of night sky and the underside of the street. The town's sounds were wrong. No distant dogs. No late-night engines. No wind in trees. Just the faint, constant hum of electricity, like a lullaby for something that didn't sleep. Evan's chest rose and fell too fast. His hands were empty now. The first nail was gone, swallowed by the creek. Silas leaned against the wall, breathing hard, shotgun across his knees. "You did good," Silas said, voice rough. Evan shook his head, trembling. "I rang the bell," he whispered. Silas's eyes narrowed. "We needed to," he said. Evan swallowed. What if waking it was the worst thing we could do? Silas's gaze went distant, and for a moment he looked old, older than his face. "It was already waking," Silas murmured. "We just stopped pretending it wasn't." Evan pressed his palm to his chest. Something inside him felt different. Not pain exactly. A pressure. A faint, rhythmic throb that didn't match his heartbeat. Like a second pulse. Evan's voice came shaky. "I can still hear it." Silas's jaw tightened. "The invitation," he said. Evan nodded, throat tight. "It's quieter than before, but it's deeper." Silas stared at him hard. "Tell me what it says," Silas demanded. Evan hesitated. Silas's eyes sharpened. "Now." Evan swallowed. "It says, again," he whispered, "like it likes what I did." Silas's face drained of color. "That's bad," Silas said. Evan's stomach dropped. "Because revoke is still a response?" Silas nodded slowly. "Because you didn't just close a door," he said. "You proved you can change the rules." Evan's throat tightened. Silas leaned closer, voice low. "The hollow doesn't like surprises," he said, "but it loves a person who can be turned into a tool." Evan's pulse hammered. Above them, through the grate, footsteps passed. Slow. Measured. Not running. Just strolling. Silas went still, shotgun lifting slightly. Evan held his breath. A shadow passed over the grate, blocking the little bit of sky. Then a voice drifted down, warm and familiar. "Evan." Evan's stomach turned. Not Alden.
Ma.
Evan's chest tightened. Mara, he whispered. Silas hissed. Don't. Evan froze, swallowing the word back. The voice above continued, gentle and tired. I'm not asking you to come out, Mara said. I just want to talk. Silas's eyes flashed. Evan's throat tightened. Mara had warned him. She'd helped. Silas leaned in, whispering harshly. If it wants you to speak, it wants you to answer. Evan squeezed his eyes shut. Above, Mara sighed. Evan, she said softly, if you're down there, listen. You broke the bell. That means the reset won't hold tonight. Evan's breath hitched. Reset won't hold. Mara's voice continued, urgent now. They'll get angry, she said. They'll start feeding openly. Not on strangers. On each other. They'll... Her voice cut off. A different voice layered over hers, smooth and polite. Pastor Alden. You shouldn't bother them, Alden said gently, as if scolding a child. Evan's blood iced. Mara's voice returned, strained. Evan, don't. A soft sound like a hand over a mouth. Then silence. Silas's knuckles whitened around the shotgun. Evan's stomach dropped, rage rising. He stepped toward the ladder rungs embedded in the drain wall. Silas grabbed him. No, Silas hissed. That's what they want. Evan shook, voice cracking. They took her. Silas's eyes were hard. They took her already, he said. If she was ever here. Evan's throat tightened. Above, Alden's footsteps moved away, slow, unhurried. As they faded, another sound rose from beneath the storm drain. Not from above, from below. A deep, distant vibration, like a giant clearing its throat underground. Evan pressed his hands to his ears. The sound wasn't loud. It was inside the bones. Silas whispered, shaken. It's awake. Evan swallowed, trembling. What now? Silas looked at him like he was about to say something terrible. Now, Silas whispered, we find the only people who ever fought it and lived. Silas led Evan through storm drains and service alleys until they reached the edge of town, near an abandoned rail yard. Old boxcars sat rusting like dead animals. A single boxcar had a light inside, faint, warm. Silas approached it like it might bite. He knocked a specific pattern on the metal. 2 taps, pause, 1 tap. Evan's stomach clenched. A moment later, the boxcar door slid open. A woman stood there holding a flashlight and a handgun. Late 30s, braided hair, tired eyes. She looked at Silas like she was deciding whether to shoot him. Ward, she said. Silas raised his hands slightly. Grace, he replied. Grace's gaze slid to Evan. And that's... she began. Michael Cross's kid, Silas said. Grace's face tightened. So the cross curse returns, she murmured. Evan bristled, exhausted and angry. I'm not a curse. Grace stared at him, unimpressed. In this town, she said, blood is always a curse. She stepped back, letting them in. Inside the boxcar were supplies, radios, batteries, paper maps, ropes, candles, rolls of copper wire, and a scattering of coins and old nails pinned to a board like a strange collection. 2 other people looked up. A young man with a buzz cut and a scar across his eyebrow, mid-20s, holding a crowbar. And an older man with glasses and a notebook, calm and pale, like he lived on caffeine and dread. Grace shut the door behind them. State your emergency, the buzz-cut guy said flatly. Silas nodded toward Evan. He broke the bell, Silas said. The older man with glasses stiffened. Grace's expression sharpened. Explain. Evan swallowed, then forced the words out. We found the first nail, Evan said. We threw it into running water. I revoked the invitation. Grace's face went still. The older man with glasses exhaled slowly, almost impressed, almost terrified. Revocation, he murmured. That's rare. The buzz-cut guy frowned. What's revocation? Grace snapped. It's war. She turned to Silas. Where's the nail now? Silas's voice was grim. Creak behind the church. It screamed. The older man with glasses scribbled furiously. Grace rubbed her forehead. Okay, she said. Okay. That means the hollow can't reset the same way. Evan's throat tightened. Reset. Grace looked at him like he was behind. The town loops, she said. Memories get rewritten. Files get stamped natural. People forget. That's the reset. It keeps outsiders from noticing patterns. Evan swallowed. So my dad was fighting that. Grace nodded once. He was, she said. And it killed him. Evan's jaw clenched. He's not dead. The boxcar went quiet. Grace stared at him. What? Evan's voice shook. Mara, she said my father is being held below the church. Grace's eyes flicked to the older man with glasses. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. Possible, he said, if the hollow uses a living anchor. Evan's chest tightened. Then we have to get him out. Grace's face hardened. If your father is an anchor, she said, pulling him out might sink the whole town. Evan stared. You're saying let him die? Grace's eyes were cold. I'm saying sometimes you cut a limb to save the body, she said. And sometimes the body isn't worth saving. Evan's anger surged. People live here. Grace didn't blink. Some of them are already gone, she said. Silas stepped between them. Grace, he said quietly, we can't debate morality right now. It's awake. As if responding, a faint vibration rolled through the boxcar floor, like a train passing far away. But no train existed. The older man with glasses looked up sharply. It's moving, he whispered. Evan's skin prickled. Grace's jaw clenched. All right, she said. We go before it sets the town on fire. The buzz-cut guy cracked his neck. Finally. Grace pointed to Evan. You, she said. What exactly did you say to revoke? Evan swallowed. I said, I revoke what I invited. Then I said it by my name. Then by Michael Cross. Grace's eyes sharpened. You used your father's name. Evan nodded. Grace's face tightened. That means it knows you'll use names, she said. It will try to use yours. Evan's throat went dry. Grace tossed Evan a small pouch. Evan caught it, startled by the weight. Coins, Grace said. Claim metal. If you hear a question, you don't answer. You throw metal. Evan nodded. Grace moved to the supply board and pulled down a bundle wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it. Inside was an old railroad spike, thick, black iron. She handed it to Silas. Silas stared. That's the first rail spike, Grace said. If the nail woke it, this might pin it. Temporarily. Evan's skin prickled. The older man with glasses scribbled again, murmuring, nail in water, spike in earth, balance. Old law. Grace looked at Evan. One more thing, she said. Evan braced. Grace's eyes were hard. If it offers you your father, she said, you don't take the deal. Evan's chest tightened. Grace continued, voice low. If you take the deal, you're the new anchor. Evan's blood went cold. Silas's expression tightened. Grim agreement. Evan swallowed. I won't. Grace held his gaze like she didn't believe him. Then she opened the boxcar door. Night air rolled in, colder now, thicker. And beneath the hum of electricity, Evan heard it. A faint, hungry choir warming up under the town. They moved through back streets toward the center. Grace led, Silas behind her, the buzz-cut guy, Dane, flanking, and the older man, Dr. Kellen, bringing up the rear with maps and notes. Evan walked in the middle, clutching coins like a rosary. Street lights flickered. Windows glowed. But the town felt wrong, like it was awake the way a predator is awake. They passed the diner. Inside, the patrons stood clustered around the counter, motionless. Alden stood behind the counter like a bartender, smiling. He raised a hand in a small, polite wave at their passing. Grace didn't wave back. They reached the small town square. There, under the old courthouse clock tower, people gathered in a circle. Not talking, not laughing, just standing, faces blank, eyes wide. In the center of the circle was the county administrator, Harlan. He held a stack of papers. His hands shook. Alden stood beside him, one hand on Harlan's shoulder like comfort. Grace stopped in shadow. "What are they doing?" Evan whispered. Dr. Kellen's voice was tight. "Consent ceremony," he murmured. "They're distributing agreements." Evan stared. Harlan lifted the papers and spoke in a hollow voice. "I agree," the crowd murmured in unison. "Agree." Evan's stomach turned. Alden smiled gently. "Yes," Alden said softly. "Say yes. It's easier." Harlan's eyes were wet, terrified, but his mouth kept moving like it wasn't his. "I agree to," he stammered. Grace's jaw clenched. "They're writing the town into a contract," she whispered. Silas's voice was bitter. "Always." Dane shifted, impatient. "We gonna stop it or watch?" Grace nodded. "We stop it," she said. She pulled a coil of copper wire from her bag and a handful of coins. She looked at Evan. "You do exactly what I say." Evan nodded, throat tight. Grace whispered, "We break the circle. We break the speech." She moved, fast, toward the gathering. Silas and Dane followed. Dr. Kellen stayed back, murmuring notes under his breath. Evan followed, heart pounding. Grace stepped into the ring of townspeople. Instantly, heads turned toward her, slow, synchronized. Their eyes fixed on her like she was a new offering. Alden's smile widened. "Grace Mercer," Alden said warmly. "You're back." Grace's voice was cold. "I never left," she said. Alden chuckled softly. "You did," he said. "But you always come home. Everyone does." Grace tossed a coin at the ground. Clink. The air snapped. Several townspeople flinched, stepping back like burned. The circle broke. Harlan gasped as if waking. His papers fluttered. Alden's smile faltered. Then his eyes darkened. "Rude," Alden whispered. Dane stepped forward and yanked the papers from Harlan's hands. He tore them in half. The crowd made a soft sound, like disappointment. Alden's voice dropped, losing warmth. "You're making this messy," he said. Grace pulled the copper wire and whipped it in a quick loop around a nearby lamppost, anchoring it, then around another, forming a crude boundary line. She scattered coins along it. Clink, clink. The air snapped repeatedly. A visible ripple, like heat haze, shuddered around the boundary. Alden stepped back instinctively. His smile returned, tighter now. "You're still playing with relics," he said. Grace's eyes were fierce. "Relics are claims," she snapped. "Claims are pain." Alden's gaze slid to Evan. His eyes gleamed. "And what are you, Evan?" Alden asked softly. "A claim or a door?" Evan's throat tightened. The voice in his head whispered, "Answer." Evan's hand plunged into his pouch and threw a coin. Clink. The air snapped. Alden flinched, smile cracking for a heartbeat. Evan didn't speak. Grace nodded once, approval. Alden's eyes narrowed. Then he smiled again, slower. He raised his hands in surrender. "Very well," he said. "If you won't sign the town, we'll just feed." He turned his head slightly, as if listening. The ground beneath the square trembled. The courthouse clock tower shuddered. The clock hands jerked, skipping minutes, then hours, like time being rewritten. People gasped, looking around in confusion. Some cried out. Alden's voice became a whisper, but it carried, "Wake," he said. The tremor deepened. A low sound rolled up from underground, like a subterranean choir clearing its throat. And then something happened that made Evan's blood freeze. One of the townspeople, a man near the edge of the circle, turned and sank his teeth into the shoulder of the person beside him. Not ripping, not gore, just a sudden bite, a desperate cling. The bitten person gasped, eyes wide, then relaxed, like relief, like surrender. More people began to move, leaning toward each other, clutching, biting, pressing mouths to skin in a hungry, intimate panic. No blood sprayed, no limbs, just feeding. Evan's stomach turned. Grace swore. "It's making them do it," she hissed. Dr. Kellen's voice trembled from behind. "Mass consent collapse," he whispered. "It's turning the town into its own meal." Alden watched the chaos with calm satisfaction. "This is America," he said softly. "Everyone signs something eventually." Grace's eyes blazed. Silas stepped forward, raising the rail spike. Alden's smile widened. "Oh," Alden murmured. "You brought a pin." Silas's voice was a growl. "Where is Michael Cross?" Alden's eyes gleamed. "Below," he said. Silas's jaw clenched. "Take us." Alden's smile softened. "May I?" he asked gently. Silas froze. Evan's stomach dropped. A question. A trap. Silas's mouth tightened. He almost answered. Grace grabbed Silas's arm and yanked him back. "No," she snapped. "He doesn't lead." Alden sighed, disappointed. "Then follow the noise," Alden murmured. "It's already calling you." The tremor deepened again, and from somewhere beneath the church, a sound rose, faint but distinct. A human voice. Weak. Familiar. Evan's blood iced. His father's voice. Real this time, strained, not smooth, not layered. Evan's knees went weak. Grace grabbed Evan's shoulder. "It's bait," she hissed. Evan's eyes burned. That was him. Grace shook him. "Even if it is, you don't trade yourself." Evan swallowed, shaking. Silas's voice cracked. "We're going down," he said. Grace's jaw tightened. Then she nodded once. "Fine," she said. "But we go our way. Not Alden's." The church loomed at the end of the street. Its doors were open. Its stained glass glowed faintly, eyes too wide, smiles too thin. And beneath it, something sang, deep and hungry, like the nation's oldest throat waking. They entered the church through the side door. The sanctuary was empty now. No crowd, no service. Just candles, flickering in drafts that didn't exist. Grace led them to the foundation panel. She lifted it, revealing the crawl space opening. Cold air breathed out. Dane cursed softly. Dr. Kellen murmured, "No dead ends. No answers. No agreements." Silas gripped the rail spike. Evan clutched coins. Grace looked at Evan hard. "If you hear your father," she said, "you do not answer questions. You do not accept help. You do not agree." Evan nodded, swallowing hard. They climbed down. The crawl space felt tighter than before. The darkness thicker. Evan's flashlight beam trembled across beams and dirt. A faint hum vibrated through the wood, like a choir warming below. They reached the spot where Evan had pulled the first nail. The hole in the beam looked like a missing tooth. Dr. Kellen crouched, shining his light. "Foundation breach," he whispered. "The barrier's compromised." Grace nodded. "That's why it's feeding," she said. "The pin's gone. The mouth is open." They crawled onward until the crawl space widened into a hidden access shaft, stone-lined, descending. Alden's voice drifted faintly from above, from somewhere far in the church. "Careful," he called softly. "Down is where truth lives." No one answered. Evan felt the invitation inside him stir, like an itch. "Answer him," the inside voice whispered. Evan threw a coin behind him. Clink. The air snapped. The whisper quieted. They descended into stone tunnels, older than the town, older than the church. The walls were carved with symbols. Dr. Kellen traced one with his gloved finger. "Contract language," he murmured. "This isn't religion. It's law." Grace's voice was cold. "Same thing," she said. The tunnel opened into the bone-walled chamber Evan had seen before. But it looked different now. Brighter. As if the walls were sweating light. The offering circle was disturbed. Coins scattered, objects moved. And in the center, something new had appeared, a hole in the floor. A circular opening like a well. Darkness rising from it in slow breaths. Evan's stomach turned. Dr. Kellen's voice shook. "That wasn't here." Silas stared, face hard. It opened. Grace approached the hole carefully, copper wire in hand. She tossed a coin toward the edge. Clink. The air snapped. The darkness inside the hole recoiled like it didn't like being touched by ownership. Grace nodded. "Still hurts it," she murmured. Then the voice rose from the hole, low and layered. "Grace!" Grace stiffened. It knew her name. The voice was not Alden. Deeper. Older. Like a choir sung through stone. "Grace Mercer," it murmured, amused. "You ran." Grace's jaw clenched. "I left," she snapped. The voice chuckled, a vibration that shook dust from the ceiling. "No one leaves," it whispered. "They only loop." Evan's skin crawled. Silas stepped forward, voice harsh. "Where is Michael Cross?" The voice paused. Then it answered, almost tender. "Below," it said. "He keeps my heart beating." Evan's chest tightened. Grace's eyes flashed. "We're taking him out." The voice laughed, deeper now. "Take him," it murmured, "and I will breathe." Dane tightened his grip on the crowbar. "Stop talking and do something," he muttered. Grace nodded sharply. "Silas," she said. "Spike." Silas stepped toward the hole, rail spike raised. Grace positioned coins in a ring around the opening, forming a boundary. Dr. Kellen laid out copper wire in a quick pattern, triangles and loops. Evan stood at the edge, shaking, clutching coins. The voice from the hole softened, coaxing. "Evan," it whispered. Evan's blood iced. "Your father is tired," the voice murmured. "Would you like to help him rest?" Evan's throat tightened. "A question. A trap." Grace snapped. "Don't answer." Evan's hand trembled. He threw a coin into the hole. Clink, but the coin didn't clink. It vanished into darkness with no sound. The air didn't snap. Evan's stomach dropped. Dr. Kellen's eyes widened. "It's absorbing claim," he whispered. "It's learning." Grace's face hardened. "Then we don't feed it metal," she snapped. "We feed it pain." Silas lifted the rail spike higher. He drove it down toward the hole's edge, and the ground bucked. A shock wave hit them, knocking Grace back, Dane stumbling. Silas staggered, but kept his grip. The voice rose, louder now, vibrating through the chamber walls. "No," it boomed, not as refusal, but as hunger denied. Evan's chest seized. The invitation in his skull flared, hot. "Say yes," it whispered, frantic. Evan's lips trembled. Grace grabbed Evan by the collar. "Look at me," she hissed. Evan met her eyes. Grace's voice was fierce, urgent. "Your mouth is yours," she said. "Say your name like a weapon, not as an offering." Evan swallowed hard. He breathed in, and spoke, not to the thing, but to himself. "I am Evan Cross," he said. The words steadied him, like grabbing a railing in a storm. The voice from below hissed, irritated. Silas roared and slammed the rail spike into the stone beside the hole, pinning the boundary. The air snapped violently. The chamber lights flickered. The hole shuddered. A deep, angry hum rose. Then, suddenly, a hand reached up from the darkness. Not clawed, not monstrous. A human hand. Shaking. Evan's breath caught. A voice, weak, real, rose with it. "Evan?" Evan's eyes burned. "My dad," he whispered. Grace grabbed Evan's wrist hard. Don't touch, she hissed. The hand groped for the edge. Silas leaned in, face grim. Michael, he said softly, voice cracking. Hold on. The hand gripped stone. Another hand appeared. Then a head, gray hair, sweat, eyes half-lidded. Michael Cross, Evan's father. Alive. Barely. Evan's chest cracked open. Dad, Evan breathed. Michael's eyes found Evan. They were real, tired, human. His mouth moved slowly. He whispered, "Don't answer." Evan's throat tightened. Then Michael's expression changed. Pain, terror. His eyes widened. He looked past Evan, at something deeper. Then the choir voice surged up through Michael's mouth, like it was wearing him. "Evan," it whispered, "may I come home with you?" Evan's blood turned to ice. Michael's face strained, fighting. Tears slid down his cheeks. His voice returned, faint and broken. "Run," he gasped. The choir voice swallowed him again. "Say yes," it cooed through Michael's lips. Evan's knees went weak. Grace dragged Evan backward. Silas's face twisted in grief and rage. He slammed the rail spike deeper into stone. The air snapped again, hard. Michael screamed, not gore, not tearing, just a human scream of strain, as if being pulled between worlds. Dane swore, eyes wide. "This is insane." Dr. Kellen's voice trembled. "He's a conduit," he whispered. "A living speaker." Grace's eyes were wet, but hard. "We can't pull him out," she said. Evan's voice cracked. "We have to." Grace shook her head, fierce. "If we pull him," she whispered, "it breathes." Evan's chest heaved, panic and grief mixing. Michael's human eyes returned for a second. He looked at Evan, pleading. Then he mouthed something, silent, desperate. Evan read it. "Burn it." Evan's blood iced. "Burn the church? Burn the town? Burn the hollow?" Grace stared at Michael, understanding dawning. Dr. Kellen whispered, horrified. "The deed, the founding claim. If you burn the deed metal, you erase the contract." Silas's eyes widened. "The courthouse," he hissed. "The original deed is in the vault." Grace grabbed Silas's arm. "Then we go," she snapped. "Now." Evan stared at his father, trapped in the hole, voice switching between human pain and choir sweetness. Evan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," Evan whispered. Michael's human voice came one last time, barely audible. "Don't say yes." Then the darkness yanked him down like a tide. The hand slipped. Gone. The hole pulsed. The chamber trembled. The voice below laughed softly, satisfied. "You tasted him," it whispered to Evan. "Now you want him." Evan's stomach turned. Grace yanked Evan toward the tunnel. "Move," she hissed. They ran. Behind them, Alden's voice floated down the tunnels, warm as ever. "Ah," he called. "Now you understand what family means." They surfaced through a maintenance hatch behind the courthouse. Cold night air slapped Evan's face, sharp and clean compared to the underground rot, yet the air still felt watched. The courthouse square was half-lit, the clock tower looming. Its hands spun in small stutters, as if time itself couldn't decide what hour it was. Grace led them along the wall, keeping to shadows. Dane went first at every corner, crowbar ready. Dr. Kellen murmured to himself, clutching his notebook like scripture. Silas carried the rail spike, jaw set. Evan carried coins, and a new weight in his chest. The memory of his father's eyes, human for a moment, then used like a mouth. "Vault's in the basement," Grace whispered. "Original deed is in a fireproof lockbox. We burn the deed metal, we burn the contract." Evan's voice came raw. "And my dad." Grace's eyes didn't soften. "We break the contract," she whispered. "Then we see what's left." Evan hated that answer. They slipped through a side door, unlocked of course, and into the courthouse hallway. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air smelled like paper and wax. The portraits on the wall were wrong. Every framed judge and mayor stared out with the same calm, faint smile, as if each one had already agreed to something. Evan's throat tightened. They moved down the hallway in silence. Then a voice floated from the darkness behind the reception desk. Warm, polite. Pastor Alden. I'm glad you're finally visiting the courthouse, Alden said. It's where we keep our promises. Grace froze, gun raised. Alden stepped into the dim light, hands open. He looked unbothered. Dane snarled. How are you everywhere? Alden smiled. When you're invited, he said gently, you don't need roads. Evan's stomach turned. Silas's eyes burned. You're not invited here. Alden's gaze slid to Evan's face. His smile sharpened. I am, he said softly. Evan's chest tightened. The invitation in him stirred. Grace stepped forward, gun steady. Move, she said coldly, or I put you down. Alden's smile remained. May you? He asked politely. The question hit the air like a weight. Grace's jaw clenched. She didn't answer. She fired. The shot cracked through the courthouse. Alden flinched, just slightly, his head turning as the bullet tore through the side of his robe. No blood. No collapse. Alden looked mildly annoyed. Rude, he murmured. Grace fired again. Alden's body blurred, just for a blink, like a frame skipped. He was suddenly 2 steps to the side. Then 3. Not running, not dodging, just repositioning, as if the world had edited itself around him. Evan's stomach dropped. Dr. Kellen whispered, terrified, Speaker behavior. He's not traveling. He's appearing where he's permitted. Grace snapped. Then we revoke permission. She turned to Evan, eyes fierce. Evan, she said. Say it clean. No bargaining. No questions. Evan's throat tightened. The inner voice whispered, Don't. Say yes instead. Evan's hands shook. Grace stepped closer, voice low, urgent. Now. Evan forced air into his lungs and spoke. I revoke you, Evan said, voice shaking. From this place. From my path. The words hit the hallway. For a second, the fluorescent lights dimmed. Alden's smile faltered. Not gone, but strained. Interesting, he murmured. Silas stepped forward and slammed a coin onto the courthouse floor. Clink. The air snapped. Alden's shoulders twitched like he'd been slapped. His eyes darkened. Grace motioned sharply. Move. They ran past Alden. He didn't chase. He only called after them, voice warm with new interest. Careful, Evan, Alden said. Revocation is addictive. Evan's chest tightened. And under the courthouse, something deep shifted and laughed, soundless, like a smile in stone. They reached the basement stairwell. The door at the bottom was locked. Dane grinned grimly and jammed the crowbar into the seam. He pried. Metal groaned. The door opened. Cold air spilled out. Not just basement cold. The kind of cold that felt like a held breath. They stepped into the records basement. Rows of file cabinets. Shelving. Boxes. A steel vault door at the far end. Grace moved toward the vault, gun up. Dr. Kellen whispered, No names. No questions. No answers. Evan nodded, swallowing hard. They reached the vault. A rotary dial lock. Old-fashioned. Silas stared at it. Code. Grace's jaw clenched. We don't have time. Dane stepped forward, crowbar raised. Grace grabbed his wrist. No, she snapped. Metal on metal draws attention. Dane scoffed. Everything draws attention. Dr. Kellen leaned in, studying the dial. It's not a lock, he whispered. Grace frowned. What? Kellen pointed. See the marks? Not where. They're symbols. Evan's skin prickled. Kellen's voice trembled with realization. It's a contract wheel, he whispered. It doesn't open with numbers. Evan swallowed. Then how? Kellen looked at Evan, pale. It opens with consent, he whispered. Evan's stomach dropped. Grace's eyes hardened. No, a soft voice drifted from behind them. Alden again, patient. You finally found the vault, he said warmly. Good. That means you're ready to sign. Grace spun, gun up. Alden stood at the basement door, calm. You can't cross running water, Silas growled. What's your limit here? Alden smiled. This isn't water, he said gently. This is law. Grace's voice was ice. We're not signing anything. Alden's eyes glinted. You already did, he whispered, gaze sliding to Evan. He did. Evan's chest tightened. Alden took one slow step forward. The basement lights flickered. The filing cabinets rattled softly. Alden's voice softened. Evan, he said, may I help you open it? Evan's throat went dry. The inner voice in Evan surged, sweet and urgent. Say yes. Open it. Save him. Evan clenched his fists. Grace grabbed Evan's shoulder. Don't, she hissed. Silas stepped toward Alden, rail spike raised like a spear. Alden smiled at Silas. You can't stab a voice, he murmured. Then gently, Alden asked again, more intimate, almost fatherly. Evan, he said, may I help? Evan shook, jaw tight. Grace leaned close, whispering, we don't open it his way. We open it with fire. Dane glanced around. Fire in a basement full of paper, he hissed. Grace's eyes were hard. Exactly, she said. Kellen swallowed. The deed's fireproof, he whispered. But the room isn't. Silas's jaw clenched. We burn the nest. Evan's stomach dropped. People are upstairs. Grace stared at him, fierce. And people are below, she snapped. Your father. Everyone they've filed as natural. They're feeding on the living because the dead won't stay dead enough. Evan's eyes burned. Alden's smile softened, almost sad. Listen to her, Alden murmured. She's telling you the truth. There will be loss. He took another step. Evan's chest tightened. The invitation in him pulled like a hook. Grace pulled a small canister from her bag, lighter fluid. She tossed it to Dane. Dane caught it, eyes wide. You're serious? Grace nodded. Pour a line, she said. Not on the vault. Around the cabinets. We make smoke. We make panic. We make space. Dane moved, hands shaking but fast. Silas held Alden at bay, rail spike ready. Evan stood frozen, heart pounding. Alden smiled at him. You want your father, Alden whispered. You can have him. Evan swallowed. He's not yours. Alden's eyes glinted. Everything you love becomes mine, he whispered. The moment you ask me to return it. Evan's breath caught. Grace struck a match. The flame trembled, tiny and bright. She looked at Evan. This will change everything, she whispered. Evan's throat tightened. He nodded once. Grace dropped the match onto the fluid line. Flame raced along the floor, blooming into fast orange tongues. Paper crackled. Smoke rose. Alden's smile vanished. For the first time, anger flashed across his face. Real, sharp. No, Alden hissed. He moved, fast, toward the fire. Silas slammed a coin down and thrust the rail spike between Alden and the flames. Clink. Snap. Alden recoiled, hissing like tearing paper. Grace yelled, now. They ran for the vault. Smoke thickened. Heat rose. Kellen coughed, eyes watering. Dane grabbed the vault dial, fingers trembling. Consent wheel, Kellen choked. It needs, Evan's mind screamed. The inner voice whispered, say yes. Evan stared at the dial. A word formed in his mind, sticky and easy. Yes. But he remembered, Revocation was addictive. He needed something else. Ownership. Evan's voice came low, fierce, through smoke. "I claim," he said. The air shuddered. The dial clicked once. Evan continued louder. "I claim what was stolen," he said. "By my name." Click. The vault trembled. Alden's roar rose behind them. No longer polite, no longer human. "Stop," Alden snarled. Evan forced the words out, each one like pulling glass from his throat. "By Michael Cross," Evan shouted. "I claim." The dial spun by itself. The vault door clicked. Unlocked. Grace yanked it open. Inside was a small metal lockbox, black and heavy, stamped with an old seal. Kellen grabbed it with gloved hands. "Deed metal," he coughed. Alden surged toward them, fast. Silas slammed the rail spike into the floor between them. The air snapped violently. Alden stumbled. His face shifted. For a split second, Evan saw something under Alden's skin, like a second face trying to push through. Not fangs. Not a monster movie mouth. A wrongness. A mouth inside a mouth. Alden's eyes went dark, and when he spoke, the voice wasn't just his. It was layered, choir deep. "You can't burn a contract," it said through Alden. "Contracts rewrite fire." The flames roared higher, as if offended. Grace grabbed Evan. "Out!" she shouted. They ran as the basement filled with smoke. Behind them, Alden's laughter returned, now low, ugly. And beneath it, the courthouse clock tower above shuddered, time stuttering like a dying heartbeat. They burst out of the courthouse into the night. Smoke poured from basement windows. The square had begun to gather people, drawn by light, by commotion, by instinct. Faces turned toward the courthouse, wide-eyed. Some looked confused. Some looked frightened. Some looked hungry. Grace clutched the lockbox. Kellen ran beside her, coughing. Silas looked back once. "Not enough," he rasped. "It's not enough." Evan's chest heaved. "We have the deed." Grace nodded sharply. "We burn it where it began," she said. "Church foundation. The wrong cross." Evan's stomach turned. Back to the church. Back to the mouth. The town's streetlights flickered. The air vibrated with the deep hum, stronger now. The true one was awake and amused. They sprinted down the street toward the church. Behind them, townspeople began to follow. Slow at first, then faster. Not chasing. Following like sleepwalkers toward a bell. Evan's heart pounded. The inner voice whispered again, intimate and satisfied. "You like this. You like being needed." Evan clenched his teeth. The church loomed ahead, doors open like a throat. Grace didn't go in. She ran around to the back, toward the creek. Running water. A boundary. A place the rules still touched. They reached the creek bank, breath ragged. The churchyard was full of shadows now. Figures watching from trees. Eyes reflecting faintly. Grace knelt and set the lockbox on a flat stone near the water. Kellen fumbled in his bag and pulled out bolt cutters. He snapped the lockbox seal. The lid opened with a metallic sigh. Inside was an old object wrapped in oilcloth. Kellen unwrapped it carefully. A thin sheet of tarnished metal, like a flattened coin, stamped with a seal and faint lettering. The original deed plate. The town's first claim. Evan's stomach tightened. Kellen whispered, awe and fear. "This is it. The first yes, in metal." Grace pulled out a lighter. Her hands were steady. She looked at Evan. "This will break the loop," she said. "But it won't be clean." Evan swallowed. "Do it." Grace flicked the lighter. A small flame rose. She touched it to the oilcloth. It burned quickly, curling into ash. Then she held the flame against the deed plate. Metal doesn't catch fire, but this metal reacted. It darkened, then glowed faintly, like it was remembering heat from a century ago. The air around them snapped. The creek surged. A deep sound rose from under the church, an angry, waking groan. Alden stepped into view on the far side of the creek. He stopped at the water's edge. His face looked strained now. His smile was gone. He looked hungry in a way that wasn't polite anymore. "You don't understand what you're burning," Alden said, voice rougher. Grace didn't look up. "We understand enough." Alden's gaze locked on Evan. "You," he said softly. "You could stop this." The inner voice in Evan surged. "Say yes. Save him. Save your father. Save everyone." Evan's throat tightened. Alden leaned closer to the water, eyes gleaming. "May I cross?" he asked gently. Evan's blood iced. The question was pointed at Evan, not the group. A request aimed at the invitation inside him. Grace snapped, "Don't you dare." Evan trembled. Alden's voice softened, almost kind. "Your father is tired," Alden said. "He wants rest. He wants to come home." Evan's eyes stung. Alden's mouth curved into a faint smile. "And I can bring him," Alden whispered. "Just say yes." The flame licked the deed plate. It glowed brighter. The air vibrated. The creek's surface rippled in tight circles. The town behind them hummed like a choir warming up for a hymn. Evan's chest felt like it was splitting. He could almost hear his father's breath. Almost. Grace's voice came fierce. "Evan, look at me." Evan met her eyes. Grace whispered, "Your father told you, don't answer. Don't trade. Don't invite." Evan swallowed hard. Alden's voice slid in, sweet as poison. "Evan," he said, "may I?" Evan threw a coin at the water's edge. Clink. The air snapped. Alden flinched violently, as if slapped. His face twisted, not into rage, but into something like hunger denied. He hissed, low and ugly. Grace pressed the flame harder against the deed plate. The plate glowed white-hot for a moment. Then the stamped seal warped. The air ripped. A sound rolled through the town, like a page tearing in a giant book. Streetlights flickered off, then on. The courthouse clock tower's hands spun wildly, then stopped. And for a heartbeat, Evan felt something lift, like a pressure released from his lungs. The inner voice inside him went quiet. Too quiet. Then the creek surged, splashing up, cold water spraying Evan's face. Evan gasped. Alden staggered backward, clutching his chest like he'd been struck. His body blurred. His robe fluttered like it was full of wind. His face began to change. The calm pastor mask slipped. For a split second, Evan saw what was underneath. Not a monster. A void shaped like a man. A human silhouette filled with darkness. A mouth where a face should be, opening, not with fangs, but with words. The true one's voice erupted through Alden, deep and furious. "You broke the claim." The words shook the trees. The creek churned. Grace stumbled, coughing. Kellen fell to one knee, hands over his ears. Dane swore, backing away. Silas raised the rail spike, trembling. Evan's chest seized. Then, from beneath the church, a human scream rose, his father's voice, breaking free or breaking apart. Evan's eyes burned. "Dad!" he shouted, one word, uncontrolled. The moment he spoke, the inner voice inside him sparked awake again. Small, eager. Answering. Evan clamped his mouth shut, terrified of his own lips. Grace yelled, "Stop talking! No names!" Evan shook, ashamed. Alden, what was left of him, stumbled, then straightened. His eyes were no longer gray. They were black. He smiled, but it wasn't polite. It was ancient. "Fine," Alden whispered. "No contract." He looked at Evan with pure hunger. "Then we eat without paper," he said. And he stepped into the creek. Evan's blood iced. The running water did not stop him, because the deed was broken. The rule was broken. The law was rewritten. Grace screamed, "Run!" They ran along the creek bank toward the storm drain entrance. Behind them, Alden followed, wet shoes, calm steps, eyes black. The creek no longer barred him. The boundary had been anchored to the contract, and the contract was burning in ash. Evan's lungs burned. Grace clutched her gun, firing back, shots cracking, useless. Dane swung his crowbar at a shadow that wasn't there, panic rising. Kellen stumbled, coughing, clutching his notebook like it was an amulet. Silas lagged behind, rail spike raised, face grim. Evan's mind raced. If old rules were breaking, what rules remained? Ownership. Claim. Evan's chest tightened. The inner voice whispered again. You opened a path. You can open a door. You can close one too. Evan stumbled. Grace grabbed him. Keep moving. Evan's voice shook. Running water doesn't work anymore. Grace's face was white. Then claim metal is all we have. Silas snarled from behind. And fire. They reached the storm drain opening. Grace shoved Dane inside first, then Kellen. Evan climbed down. The tunnel swallowed them. Silas was last, backing in, rail spike aimed at Alden. Alden appeared at the drain mouth. Too fast, too close. He smiled. Silas, he murmured. Always loyal. Silas's voice cracked. Go back to hell. Alden tilted his head. Hell is a story, he whispered. I'm a contract. Silas roared and thrust the rail spike forward. It struck Alden's chest. The air snapped like lightning. Alden jerked, mouth opening in a soundless snarl. For a moment, he looked hurt, truly. Then his smile returned, wicked. He reached out and placed his hand on the rail spike. And the spike began to darken, as if rusting in seconds. Ownership rewritten. Silas's eyes widened. Alden whispered, gentle as a lover, May I take it? Silas's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Alden smiled wider. Then I will, he whispered. He yanked. The spike ripped from Silas's hands. Not gore. Not tearing flesh. Just a brutal yank that sent Silas stumbling backward into the drain. Silas hit the concrete hard, breath knocked out. Alden stepped down into the storm drain. Inside, the air turned colder than winter. Evan's chest seized. Alden's black eyes swept the group. He smiled at Evan. Evan, he said softly, you burned my paper. Now I want your mouth. Evan's throat tightened. The inner voice roared, Say yes. Say yes. Grace raised her gun, shaking. Stay back. Alden smiled. May I? He asked, voice sweet. Grace's lips parted. Then she threw her gun at him instead of answering. The metal clanged against his shoulder. The air snapped faintly. Alden flinched, annoyed. Grace grabbed Evan's wrist. Run, she hissed. They bolted deeper into the storm drain tunnels. Alden followed, not rushing, like a man strolling behind prey that had nowhere to go. The tunnels twisted. Evan's mind flashed to the ribbon of running water in the underground tunnel. The boundary under the water tower. Was it still there? Or had the deed burning changed everything? Evan's chest tightened. He turned his head slightly as you run in a nightmare, looking back without slowing. Alden walked behind them, calm, black eyes reflecting nothing. And beside Alden, in the shadows, were other figures. Townspeople, moving like sleepwalkers, following him like a procession, their mouths slightly open, as if tasting the air. Grace whispered, shaking. He's bringing the town with him, Kellen gasped. Without the contract, it's pure hunger now. Dane's voice cracked. We're dead. Silas wheezed, bruised, but snarled. Not yet. They reached a wider chamber, an old maintenance junction. And there, in the center of the floor, was a grate with water rushing beneath. Running water again. A chance. But Alden stepped forward too. No fear. No pause. The rule was gone. Grace's eyes darted frantically. What do we do? She whispered. Silas pushed himself upright, bleeding only pride, not blood. He looked at Evan with grim clarity. "We do what your father asked," Silas rasped. "We burn the mouth." Evan's stomach dropped. "The church is already—" "Not the building," Silas hissed. "The speaker." Grace's eyes sharpened. "We can't kill him," Kellen coughed. "Maybe not," he whispered. "But we can sever him." Evan's throat tightened. "How?" Kellen's eyes locked on Evan, terrified and certain. "Revocation," he whispered. "But not of a place. Not of a path." Evan's skin crawled. Kellen continued. "You invited him. Only you can unmake that invitation fully." Evan's chest tightened. The inner voice whispered, almost excited. "Say something. Say the right thing. Be the mouth instead." Evan shook, nauseated. Grace grabbed Evan's face, forcing him to look at her. "Evan," she whispered, fierce. "If you do this wrong, you become him." Evan's eyes stung. Alden's footsteps approached, echoing softly. He smiled as he entered the chamber. He looked almost pleased, like a teacher watching a student arrive at the final exam. "Here we are," Alden said warmly. "At the last question." He tilted his head. "Evan," he said gently, "may I have your voice?" The question hung in the air. The town behind him hummed. The inner voice in Evan screamed, "Say yes." Evan's lips trembled. Silas rasped, "Do it." Grace whispered, "Do it clean." Kellen murmured, "No bargains. No questions." Evan inhaled. His chest hurt. He felt his father's name like a weight. He felt his own name like a blade. He spoke, and his voice was raw, shaking, but "I revoke you," Evan said. "From my blood." Alden's smile faltered. Evan continued, louder, each word deliberate. "I revoke you from my mouth," Evan said. "From my name. From my consent." The air snapped, hard. Alden staggered a step. His black eyes narrowed. Evan's voice rose, fierce now, almost a shout. "I revoke you forever," he said. "By Evan Cross." Alden hissed, paper tearing, stone cracking. The tunnel lights flickered. The procession behind Alden shuddered. For a moment, the townspeople blinked like waking. Alden's face twisted, mask slipping. The void inside him showed through. He raised a hand, trembling. "Stop," he whispered, voice no longer polite. "That's not permitted." Evan's throat burned. He forced the last line out, voice breaking but unyielding. "Permission denied," Evan said. The words hit like a hammer. The air ripped. Alden stumbled backward as if yanked by an invisible chain. His body blurred. For a heartbeat, he looked like a shadow peeling away from a man. Then he slammed against the tunnel wall, shaking. The townspeople behind him collapsed to their knees, gasping, confused. Silas coughed a laugh, half joy, half pain. Grace's eyes widened, stunned. Kellen whispered, trembling, "It worked." Alden lifted his head slowly. His black eyes were furious. But his voice, when it came, was different. Not Alden, not human. The true one. "You revoked the speaker," it rumbled. "So I will speak through you." Evan's blood iced. The inner voice inside Evan surged, no longer whispering. It filled his skull. "Say yes. Say yes. Say yes." Evan grabbed his own throat, choking on his own breath. Grace screamed, "Evan!" Evan's knees buckled. He heard his own voice, without choosing, begin to form a word. A word that wasn't his. Silas lunged, grabbing Evan, forcing coins into Evan's hands. "Throw!" Silas roared. Evan's hands shook violently. He flung coins at the rushing water grate. Clink, clink, clink. The air snapped in rapid bursts. The voice inside him stuttered, interrupted. Evan gasped. Grace shoved Evan toward the tunnel's far exit. "Go!" she shouted. Evan stumbled, shaking, the world tilting. Behind him, Alden's body, empty of something, slumped like a discarded robe. But the true one's presence remained. Not in Alden, in the town, in the walls, in Evan's blood. They ran, because they'd severed the mouth and awakened the throat. They emerged near the water tower at the edge of town. The sky was lightning, thin gray turning to bruised pink. Evan's breath came in ragged pulls. His hands shook uncontrollably. The inner voice was quieter now, but it was still there, like a second person in the backseat of his mind. Grace leaned against the water tower fence, coughing. Dane sat on the ground, shaking. Kellen stared at his notebook, hands trembling. Silas stood apart, bruised but upright. "We broke it," Dane whispered. "We broke the loop." Kellen swallowed. "We broke the contract," he said. "Not the hunger." Grace looked at Evan. Her eyes were haunted. "Can you feel it?" she asked. Evan nodded, voice hoarse. "It's inside me." Silas's jaw clenched. "Because you invited," he said. Then revoked. "You taught it a new language." Evan's eyes burned. "My father." Silas looked away, grief hardening his face. "Your father's gone," he said quietly. The anchor snapped when the deed burned. Evan's chest cracked open, but no tears came, only a hollow ache. The dawn light grew stronger. The town behind them looked almost normal. Streetlights off, windows dim, people stumbling out of confusion like waking from a long sleep. For a heartbeat, Evan felt hope. Then he heard it. From the town center, a low hum rose. Not a choir now, a murmur. People speaking in small groups, confused, frightened. And then the same question, repeated from person to person like a virus. "May I?" Evan's blood iced. Grace's face drained. "It's spreading," she whispered. Kellen's voice trembled. "Without the deed, it doesn't need paperwork," he said. "It needs culture. It needs language. It needs the habit of consent." Silas's eyes hardened. "It's turning the town into a mouth," he said. Evan's chest tightened. The inner voice whispered, intimate, "You can stop it. Say yes. Let me speak. Let me fix it." Evan clenched his fists. Grace stepped closer, voice low. "Evan," she said, "if it's in you, you can't stay." Evan swallowed. "I can't leave. The roads loop." Grace's expression was grim. "Not anymore," she said. "The contract is burned." Evan stared. "So I can go?" Grace nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "But you can't take it with you." Evan's throat tightened. "How do I not take it?" Silas stepped forward, rail spike gone, but something steadier in his eyes. "You cut the path," Silas said. Evan's stomach dropped. "By doing what?" Silas's jaw clenched, pain in his gaze. "By never speaking again," he said. "By sealing your mouth." Evan stared, horrified. Grace shook her head. "There's another way," she whispered. Kellen looked up, pale. "A bind," he murmured. "A self-contract. A voluntary vow," Silas spat. "Contracts are poison." Grace's eyes stayed on Evan. "You can choose silence," she said softly, "or you can choose exile." Evan's hands shook. He looked at the town, at the water tower, at the church steeple in the distance, still standing like a needle. He could feel the hollow behind it, awake, hungry, learning. Evan swallowed hard. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if every word was a blade that could cut him. "If I leave," he said, "it follows." Grace nodded. "It might." Evan's throat tightened. The inner voice whispered sweetly, "Say yes. Say yes. Let me help." Evan clenched his jaw until it hurt. Then he did something he hadn't done since he arrived. He made a decision without fear making it for him. "I'm not taking it out," Evan said. Grace's eyes widened. "Evan." Evan shook his head, voice steadier. "I'll stay," he said. "But not as a door." Silas's eyes narrowed. "Then what?" Evan looked at the water tower ladder, upward, toward open air. "Lock me in," Evan said. Grace stared. "What?" Evan's voice tightened. "You said it lives on permission," he said. "Then I'll deny it permission to travel through me." Kellen's voice shook. "A self-contained boundary," he whispered. "If he's sealed in a place no one enters." Silas's face was grim. "He becomes an anchor." Evan swallowed. "Better me than the highway," he whispered. Grace's eyes glistened, but she didn't argue. She nodded once. "Okay," she said hoarsely. "Okay." They climbed the fence and approached the water tower hatch. Evan's hands shook as he grabbed the ladder. He looked back at them. Grace, Silas, Dane, Kellen, faces pale in dawn. Silas stepped forward, voice rough. "If you do this," he said, "you don't invite anyone. Ever." Evan nodded. Grace whispered, fierce and broken, "Don't say yes to anything." Evan swallowed. "I won't." He climbed, rung by rung, higher into dawn. At the platform, he opened the hatch and climbed inside the tower. The air inside was cold, stale. The same archive smell. Evan turned and looked down. Grace stood below, hand on the hatch chain. Evan's throat tightened. The inner voice whispered, softer now, almost affectionate, "Home." Evan clenched his jaw and spoke one last time. "Careful, deliberate, not a bargain." "Close it," he said. Grace hesitated, eyes wet. Evan forced a faint smile. "Don't make it a question," he whispered. "Just do it." Grace nodded, then pulled. The hatch slammed shut. Metal clanged. A lock snapped into place. Darkness swallowed Evan. Inside the tower, Evan's breathing echoed. His phone flashlight flickered on, weak. The archive room was still there. Cabinets labeled "Natural," the old files, the trapdoor, the tunnel. Evan swallowed hard. He was alone. And the inner voice inside him smiled. Not with teeth. With words. "May I?" It whispered. Evan pressed his hand over his mouth. He didn't answer. He didn't move. He sat in the darkness, listening to the town outside waking into a new day. A day without a contract. A day with hunger. Then, from somewhere below the tower, deep in the tunnels, came a sound. A slow, pleased hum. Like a throat clearing. Like something preparing to speak. Evan's eyes stung. Outside, dawn became sunrise. But inside the water tower, no light reached. And Evan finally understood the last truth of Gallows Hollow. Sunrise was a lie. Because the night wasn't in the sky. It was in the mouths that asked politely, and the mouths that answered.
Before you go, look around the room for a moment. The story may have stopped here. If any of these stories stayed with you, you're not alone. Comment below the moment that made you pause, the part you can't stop thinking about, or the timestamp that felt too real. And if you don't want to face nights like this alone, subscribe now. New true horror stories every night, longer, darker, and closer to home. Turn off the lights, keep the volume low, and check your surroundings one last time. Good night.